As Kenyan artists, we're here to celebrate Jamhuri Day.
We have made strides from the time that we got independence to now. Infrastructure, our development, each and every single thing. We celebrate the little achievements that we made.
It's the day we were able to get the wings to fly. And that's important for a nation like us to be able to grow.
So to every Kenyan out there, Happy Jamhuri Day!
Kenya twasonga mbele, heshima kubwa kwa walotupigania, gharama kubwa sana wakatulipia. Hivi leo uhuru tunafurahia, hivi leo uhuru tunasherekea.
Kenya nchi ya sifa tunajivunia, watalii dunia nzima. Tanguru tunaendelea,
we share a lot of selfie moments.
Kwa umoja twazidi pepea.
Hey wa Kenya tushikane, tusemezane, tupendane, pakiharibika jambo tuelewane.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on the third and final day of GAFCOM 2019. I hope you all had a very restful night. Did you? If you had a restful night, say, I. Well, no point asking if you didn't have a restful night. And I want to believe that some of us may have taken time off to also explore and experience Kigali beyond the four walls of the convention center. Is that right? Oh, great. And I'm sure you would agree with me that this is definitely a lovely city. How many of us definitely want to come back to Kigali? That is, if it's not next door to you already. Because I definitely will be coming back to Kigali more often. Great. Oh, yeah, Emilia, I see your hand there. Fantastic. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing 2 days going on, 3 days of GAFCOM 2019. And yesterday we had a very, very interesting interactive sessions. And I'll just do a very quick recap. I mean, one significant word that resonated across all sessions was truth. It's about Africa telling its own truth. It's about Africa speaking up for itself. It's about Africa building a brand that is trusted, and trust can only come when you are known to be truthful about who you are. And there was that conversation in and around Africa beginning to invest consciously on its research information and data rather than relying on data supplied to us from the West. So how about, for a change, we begin to harness our own information, our own data to help the work we all do as communication strategists? Because you would agree with me that it's almost impossible. I wouldn't say impossible, but it's quite a Herculean task to find data, appropriate data, to help in doing certain types of work that are required on the continent. We also had a very interesting perspective in and around storytelling and storytellers, and why storytellers that we are should add value with human truths. And of course, this came based on in the context of why it's important as communication strategies, as brand custodians, why it is important for us to strive to take a seat at the table where decisions are being made. It also helps in guiding and shaping the perspective, and more importantly, the tone of voice for the various brands or corporations that we represent. And we had some fundamental pointers that can help us as communicators, and such would include: be accurate, be intentional, do something. And I remember in the presentation by Hannah Ryder, who looked at the power play, Africa being caught between the West and China. And of course, she highlighted significant points why what possibly China sees in Africa that others don't. And she did make it known to us that we need to be careful of selecting the language we use in telling our own stories. We always must contextualize as well as make cross-country comparisons. This helps in putting together a more rounded, positive opinion about the continent. And of course, one of the very significant sessions that also happened yesterday was the conversation that had the Minister of Information from the Republic of Ghana involved in that session. And it was very exciting to know that there is hope for us all gathered here at GAFCOM, that if we continue to show value and show that we can make a huge difference, we will definitely take a seat at the table of decision makers. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is in a quick recap of what happened yesterday. So we move on very quickly into the sessions today as we coast gradually to the end of GAFCOM 2019. And just before I make introductions of the first conversation panels that will happen today, I just want to remind us that we are still plugged into the internet connection of the Kigali Convention Center. So for those who may have not saved the access code, once again, the username is KCC and the password in capital letters KCC. Username KCC, password KCC. And don't forget that GAFCOM is being streamed live on our platform, and we are very excited about the reviews and comments and interactions that have continued since the first day of the conference. And of course, you can also join in on that conversation by tagging your posts and pictures and all the comments online by using the hashtag #SpeakForAfrica, hashtag GAFCOM 2019. Very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, it's with pleasure I welcome you and ask you to please join me as I welcome Chief Operating Officer, Leo Bernard Nigeria, Mr. Lekon Lawal, for a presentation.
Thank you very much. Hello, Africa. Let me start in a very simple way. Back home, when I go to my religious center, we normally welcome people. So we're going to do some role playing here. You know, after you've welcomed the people that are here, you also want to welcome people that are out there. Because like the moderator just said now, that there are a lot of people watching this live, people from your office, your family, and every one of them. So I think the starting point is for us to say thank you and clap for those guys that are watching us right now. Can you join me in clap? Appreciating them. All right. I also want to use the opportunity to appreciate all the speakers that have taught us a lot in the last 2-3 days. Anna told us yesterday some amazing facts about Mauritius and all of that. Gave us a very good perspective. I also learned the fact that apart from telling our story, we also need to control our story. We also need to be mindful of our language. Those are critical things that I want to take back home and engage my people with. But you've asked me here to come and talk about Leo Burnett, and I'll do that very quickly. But there is no way I can talk about Leo Burnett without talking about the person of Leo Burnett. I'm talking about a man that was born in about 1891, if I'm correct, and a man that defied all odds, a man that put value before business. There is a very popular quote from Leo. He said, at the point where you put profit before value, even after I've gone, please take my name out of the doorpost. And that's the reason why, even when I had the opportunity to speak yesterday, I spoke about value, I spoke about impact, because it is part of our DNA. That was the legacy he left with us, and that is what we are still campaigning till today. So you can understand why we say people are extremely important. So I'm going to take you through some slides, just about 3 or 4 or 5, and I want to let you into the world of humankind, what it means. It's a philosophy for us, and it's also a tool. I'm going to tell you how humankind has helped businesses, how it has helped people in about 86 countries in the world, which is where we have Leo Burnett. I want to tell you how humankind has impacted businesses, from the ones that we can remember. If you remember the Marlboro campaign, the Marlboro Man. So businesses that have been there for over 100 years till today. What we do at Leo Burnett is adding value in the human way. So please join me on as I just show you some few slides. Am I on? Thank you. So let me show you something. The work that we do, the advertising work, because, okay, I need to give a perspective here. I know we are all communicators, but we know you have different subsets, even in communication. So this is marketing, communication, advertising. And I'm also sure that I have a lot of clients here, clients that will tell you, I want it, you gave me the brief last night, I want it this morning, and it has to be impactful and every other thing. But look at it. So the work of advertising is warmly and immediately human. By the time you interact, even with this statement, you understand. Are we good? By the time you look at the statement, you understand the way, why, what you do, and how you do it has to be deliberate. The work of advertising is not a factory work. It has to be human. There has to be a connection. There has to be an impact immediately. When you have this mindset, it immediately changes the way you interact. And if you also say that you can look at the business problem as a set of numbers, we don't do that. Or you can look at it from the human lens. When you look at a business problem from the human lens, like I said, it changes the entire narrative, which is why I said yesterday that when you go to the narrative of the man that went to India, saw a lot of people without shoes on their feet, and said, oh, this is a business opportunity. So there is that. But when you look at it from another angle, you want to ask yourself, is there a reason beyond whatever it is, why these people are not wearing shoes? So those are the way we engage. That is how we interact with every opportunity, every brand that we have. So we believe that you stand a far better chance of changing behavior with an act. What is an act? Most of the time, we are rushing to do ads, advertising. I want to create this material. I want to do this. I want to do that. But how about, rather than creating how to sell, why not create acts that will impact? Why not create acts? So what's an act? And act can only be seen when you look at it from the human angle. Heart become heart when you look at it from the human angle, and that's why I'm welcoming you to Humankind. What is Humankind? Like I said in my introduction, it is both a philosophy. We look at it more as a philosophy than a tool. But what is even more critical is that it's a combination of people, purpose, participation, and populism. What am I talking about? Every problem that we have, every problem is embedded in one human form or the other. Yeah? So we have people here. We like I said yesterday, when we interact with brands, with consumers and all of those, we don't use all those words. We use the word people. Why? Because everything is rooted in people. Let's start with the people. Now, when you have people, when you look at your audience as people, not just as opportunity for the market, you now want to ask yourself, how do I engage them? Let me tell you something. If you apply the principle that we preach as Humankind, yeah, apply it to a nation building, it will work for you. Apply it to your business, it will work. Apply it to anything. What am I saying? First and foremost, take people as people. Don't take them as statistics. Secondly, communicate with them with a purpose. Why am I doing this beyond making profit? Why am I engaging? Why am I doing this? Whatever it is that I'm doing. I don't want to speak to advertisement alone. Why am I doing this without making profit? Why is it that NAV Africa is doing this beyond making profit? There has to be a purpose. Obama had a purpose. You know, even I saw the commercial, the documentary, The Great Arc, the one that talks about, what's the name of that company? You know, and I saw that beyond what other people are saying. Look, there is something to sell. Somebody was here yesterday talking about the fact that one of the best marketer was, what's his name? Trump. You have to have a purpose. And again, if you don't have a purpose, you will lose the people. So follow me through. But guess what? I understand that I'm relating with people, and I understand that and I'm able to sell a purpose to them. Say, for instance, like in my country, Change 2015, when we had the last election. People could relate with the fact that there is a time for us to change, and they could subscribe to that. And what happens immediately is that if people believe in your purpose, they will participate with you. They will be the champion. They will take it off you. They will become your advocate. Now apply that principle to the way you communicate your brand, the way you approach the market. Now, to get to a time, there was a time, if you remember correctly, when I think it was during the time of Obama, when there was no white person, there was no black person, but there was something that this guy has to sell, and we are ready to buy it from him. So there was a common denominator amongst people. People will speak as one, and they will now take your campaign. They will be the one campaigning for you. After some time, yeah, you get to the point of populism. Populism is when that thing has now become a movement. And I know that there are several examples of movement that we have seen around the world and even in Africa. Yeah, and that's a simple principle that we apply for every opportunity we have, for every brief that we treat, for every client that we have. We look at them through the lens of the people. What is the human problem? What is the tension? Yeah. Then what's the purpose? How can we make them buy it? How do we make them participate in it? And like the young people will say, how do you make it pop? So those are the ways that's like I said earlier on, we don't see it as a tool, we see it as a philosophy, because that's exactly what is driving the way we relate with our people back home. And that's the same thing that we campaign everywhere in the world where you have the Leopold stamp in it. Moving on quickly. Going back to our act, it's a participatory gesture or experience that can transform how one, things feels and all of that. And so when you look at what I've said earlier about people, purpose, participation, and populism, would you just want to throw out a material there and say, hi guys, it's this product, if you buy two, you get one? Or do you want to say, I'll give an example. there was a time that we, I think in 2020, what now? Some years ago, there was this issue of, officially research is now in Nigeria and all of that and all of that. And the brand approached us and said, you want to do a promo? Yeah? Just do a promo and say, we have extra cube in this pack when you buy it and all of those things. But rather than just say, you know what, I have extra cube, I say, you know what, you know that you really have to manage the resources that you have right now. Yeah? You know that as a woman, you are contending with a lot. So how can we help you? So what we'll do for you is this. We're going to show you how to cook simple meals, how to get more leverage from those simple meals that you cook. Yeah? We're going to show you how you can make simple meals and make them be something so big that your family will appreciate for it. And what would you do? We got someone to go to almost every state in Nigeria, going to the market, engaging let me apologize to use the word, random people on the street, yeah, picking to them, engaging with them, asking them, can I come to your kitchen? Can I do this? Can I do that? Cook with them and say, okay, this is how you can do it better and all of those things. And then, the usual, take it online, people were like subscribing to it and everything. So for us, that is not an advertisement, it's an act. So afterwards, when we now, release when we now release the communication that will support what we're doing, people were able to connect with it emotionally. People were able to see that, beyond just wanting to take my money, these guys are really thinking of me. And that's what we are talking about here. That's the conversation. So, and like I said, it starts with two things. So it's people and behavior. It starts and ends with people, and their behavior. There is this popular lingo in our system. We said, creativity has the power to influence human behavior. Do we agree to that? It has the power to influence human behavior. So it's about how you sell it to them. It's about how you put it in front of them. But creativity can do a lot. The whole thing that we are doing here, there is a book, Idea Rules the World. Everything we're talking about, it's all about idea. How you package your idea is how creative you are. And I can do some funny stunts here now and people start laughing and every other thing. And I'll become a hero. Maybe a super comedian or something. And then the next show you want to see me. It has the power to impact human behavior. And we need to see this and we need to see how we apply it on our businesses as well. So if you agree with me, we have what we call the humankind scores. Again, talking about impact, talking about the fact that it's not just putting material there for the sake of putting material. And I'm going to go through it. So number one is saying that it's just destructive. We won't touch that. If our communication is going to be destructive, we will never touch that. And let me also say that that's one of the reasons why we are very, very picky about the briefs that we take, about the client that we engage with. So going back to that negative narrative that I was talking about yesterday, if you come to us, even if it's political advertisement and you are saying that, I need to bring this down, we will not do that for you. Secondly, our communication must be driven by an idea. Yeah? So, but you see all the list, but the one where we benchmark ourselves is the one number 8, where it changes the way people think and feel. There is no single communication, there is no single campaign out of Leo Burnett that is not impactful. And I stand to be correct, and I'm going to show you one, and I'll tell you why. It has to be impactful. It's our DNA. Then said, changes the way people live. That is getting to the realm of, populism, like I said earlier on. Then the 10th is changes the world. Changes the world. I'll tell you a story. When Leo Burnett was going to start advertising business, it was during the recession. Yeah? And if you know, the hub of advertising in America is where? Can anybody help me? Do we know where the hub of advertising is in America? It's in Madison Square. So rather than go to Madison Square to go and open a shop where all the other guys are opening shop, he went to Chicago, a very cold place. A cold place in the time of a recession. Guess what the people said? They were looking at him and they said, you know what? You are better off selling apples. And he said, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So from that day, for if you go to any Leopold office all over the world, you'll be welcome with Apple. Because a year later, he had created the Marlboro Man. He had created some icons, some global icons that scored number 10. So, can we challenge ourselves to say, I am going to create a work, or I'm going to create a communication that will go from 8 to 10? Can we challenge ourselves? Can we, for once, excuse ourselves from the burden of result on investment or something? Because like I said yesterday, it is when you make that impact that returns will come, really. Otherwise, you just pack your shop and there you go. So I'm going to show you a commercial now, and I'll tell you the story right after. Please enjoy it.
Oh, my desire.
Oh, could you please sign your autograph? Sorry, your signature.
Konga.com, Nigeria's largest online mall.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story about this commercial. In my country, we have Jumia. Jumia is everywhere in the world, very big, doing very well. And Konga came up and wanted to take on the giant, which brings me back to that narrative yesterday about the challenger brand and all of that. We didn't have the budget of Jumia. There is no way we can match Jumia. And then, what exactly are we doing? We're just selling something on the platform, e-commerce. But how can we create an impacting communication that people will see beyond just the ordinary? So what we did was that you just don't go online to go and buy. There is a reason that you go buy. How do we, quote and unquote, humanize that transaction online? Are you looking for love? Are you looking for happiness? Are you looking for fulfillment? Because those products you are buying are not products. They are a means to an end for a want that you desire. So we had to humanize it. So we have to say, and it also coincided with the time when Tiwa Savage was just had a baby, so it was just in time. So you could find love on Konga. There are many renditions of that. Somebody going to buy a ring, you're going to buy shoes for your kids, you're going to buy this and you're going to buy that. So I found love on Konga, I found fulfillment on Konga, I found happiness on Konga, and we stretched it to every limit. And it was very impactful. Now, we got an email from the CEO of Konga at that time and said, guys, you know what? You guys have shut down my website because I had over about 200,000 requests within about 15 minutes after they saw this commercial. And we have that as an email. And we went online and we saw that and we took a snapshot of it so that when we want to negotiate rate later, they'll pay us better. So, and then what did we do again? Later, I think about December time, rather than just do the normal Christmas ad, you know what we did? We sent out invites to say, if you want to be the Father Christmas, come and apply. And people thought it was really so. We got a lot of applications of people saying they want to be the Father Christmas because I have a fair skin, because I'm big, because I'm this, I'm that, and everything. So we got quite a lot of feedback. Then we now said, okay, you know what? So we now got a white person to dress as Father Christmas. A real white person. We shot a commercial. We shot the commercial in Nigeria, but you probably think we shot it somewhere in the snow and everything. And then you could see Father Christmas himself, engaging people directly on the platform and offline. There were activations, there were this, there were that. But people could relate, people could touch the brand. But if there is anything I want to say about this campaign, is the fact that the ability for you to take something that is tangible and convert it to intangible would do a lot, would go a long way for your business, would go a long way in the way you relate people, the way people see you, the way people perceive your business and perceive your mission or whatever it is that you are doing. Yeah. So that for us is an example of how we engage with a lot of brands. I also remember when we handled the Heritage Bank campaign, we had to bring back the true nature of Africa, of who we used to be, of who we were. You know, all those kings, ancient kings and queens of Africa, we brought them back. There was something unique about them. They were bold, they were strong, they had commercial orientation, they were traders, and they were successful. And we are saying that the average African has that trait, has that DNA. So we have to bring it back into the modern time. That your Queen Amina of that time is sitting right here in this session. Do you understand? And people could say like, wow, this is interesting. That is how you create communication to impact beyond just making profit. So as I go on and as I close, this is the result of the campaign, and it was very astounding. And again, it also gave us the opportunity to engage on a wider platform with other businesses as well. Funny enough, Jumia, I think, was with our sister agency at that time. But we're like, well, we've done what we need to do. In a very short while, we'll be talking about something very critical. You know, how to win on the ground. How to win, how to engage people as people and not as statistics. But we can't go into that session without me taking you through ARC and what ARC means. Let's first and foremost agree that Africa has 40% of the world population. That is one. Number two, out of those 40%, there are about 4 countries, 3 or 4 countries that in the next couple of, I think about 2020 or so, they will control about 60% of the entire African retail market. Now, and if you look at it that way, and if you look at the fact that in Africa we have, I think it's everywhere in the world, we have people who, the economy of Africa is informal than formal, if you agree. Yeah. So if it is informal, you then see that communicating with people in their natural habitat is very important. Engaging with people in their natural habitat is very important. And which is why we deliberately created a tool called the ARC. Now, the ARC is set up to respond to retail. It's set up to respond to engage with people on one-on-one. So the ARC there's a science to it, there's an art to it. It goes beyond activation, it goes beyond consumer engagement. No, it's about the shopper. It's about the consumer as well. But let me show you something. So, we move people. People are the ones that we want to relate with. The essence of starting the business to engage with people. Yeah? But what will make them act? What will make them experience, what will make them recommend your brand? What will make them drive? It is when you are able to connect with them based on their ecosystem, based on their mindset, based on their belief system as well. That is how you can convert them. And we are saying that, so how do we put people and their behavior at the center of our process? How do we do that? How do you put people and their behavior at the center of the business that you do? Number one, you need to know them, know your shopper. You need to understand how she shops and her category. You need to be able to reach her. I tell you something. Have you wondered you going into any of those malls and what you see are product stacks everywhere? Just are product stacks everywhere, and then you have to walk to what you want to purchase and all of that. But we are saying that why don't you design the mall for the people rather than for your product? What even is the understanding? What's your understanding of those people? Before you can even say you want to design, because all we have is just gondola design and every other thing. So there are key differences. The consumer or user of product category and the shopper are different. The person that is going to consume the baby milk is not the person that's going to buy it. We need to understand. So who are we communicating to? Is it the person that is buying or the person that's going to consume it? What do you think will make your communication to be bought? Is it by communicating to the person buying or the person that is the final consumer? And but before you also get to that, you need to understand their archetype. So I'll give you an instance. if I want to say, I want to pitch a beer brand, yeah, and you want to pitch a beer brand to someone that is so rational, someone that is so functional, someone that is so into himself, just like me, someone very private, someone that does not like wahala, you know? Or do you want to pitch your beer to someone who is out there and everything? So it's important for you to understand the archetype of the category and the people that you want to sell to. So what we are saying is that it is better when you sell, people, when you sell to people and not throw product at them. It is better also when the retail shop is designed around the behavior of the people. Yeah. So when you sell to people, rather than pitch product, and you organize your product around that behavior, you get feedback. So what are we saying in essence? Number one, let us put people at the heart of our communication. Let us put people at the heart of what we want to do. Number two, let us transact with a purpose. Let us communicate with a purpose. Number three, let's ensure that whatever it is that we're communicating is something that can be bought and can be taken over by the people such a way that the burden is off you. And that reduces your communication investment anyway. And the last one is that how can we use our communication to impact? How can we use communication to impact Africa? How can we use that to change Africa? What are the things that we can do to make things better? That is the philosophy of Humankind, and that is what Leo Burnett is all about. We are a marketing communication organization that exists in about 86 countries in the world, like I said earlier on. But most people think that, are these guys an NGO or something? No. We are in business, but we are in the business of making people better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lekon Lawal's Chief Operating Officer, Leo Burnett. Mr. Lawal, could I please ask you to remain on stage, please? Another warm round of applause for Lekon Lawal. Thank you. Right. Well said. Brilliant presentation. Thank you very much for those very insightful points to note. In simple terms, put a twist to democracy. What's the definition of democracy? Government for the people, by the people, to the people. But in the case of Leo Burnett, it becomes communication for the people, by the people, to the people. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time. Presentation by Leo Burnett, a round of applause. Thank you so much. And I think the points you mentioned, people, purpose, participation, and populism is very vital, and especially when you begin to put people before profit, invariably, the profit will come in the end. At this point, it's my pleasure to invite on stage to engage more following the presentation by Mr. Lekon Lawal. I would like to have the founder, Marketplace Innovation Africa, Angurika Azubike, to please join Lekon Lawal on stage. A round of applause. Thank you. Lucky you, two men coming to help you up the stage. Great. Right there. Fantastic. Right, moderating this morning session, it's my pleasure to welcome from Leo Burnett, Head Strategy and Planning. Please make welcome for Emeka Obia. Emeka Obia will be moderating this panel, and okay, I guess that's what they do there. Chop knuckle. All right. Okay, Emeka, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Awesome, that's better. So today we're going to be talking about retail in Africa, especially from the perspective of the consumer, and as Mr. Lekon said earlier, people. I mean, Africa by 2030 would be included. Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa, would be included as one of the largest consumer markets in Africa in the world by 2030. So that already shows us the potential in that space. So for us here would be to talk about retail in Africa and talk about how we can build stronger relationship with African consumers, of course, using advertising and communication. Right, so I'll just go right into it, and let's talk about the African consumer, right? So we've been in the past few days, we've talked about, talking to Africans, connecting with the African consumer. What is the difference really between the African consumer and consumers in other markets? And I'd like to start with you, Angurika. Bearing in mind the cultural differences and the complexities that exist within this market, what would you say is the difference between an African consumer and consumers in other parts of the world?
Okay. All right, thank you, Emeka. Good morning, everyone. If I was going to answer the question around what the African consumer, I think that for too long, the continent has been treated as a country. And just as we have been saying over the last 3 days, Africa is not a country. We're a continent of 52 countries with over 2,000 dialects. And what that says to us is that our continent is even more complex than we had imagined. So imagine that we take a country like Rwanda, and we then paint Rwanda, Nigeria, Ghana with one brush. And I think it's a mistake that we've been making for a really long time. And even beyond the differences that we have within the countries, the cities are also very different. So you find out that, if I'm going to use Nigeria as an example, what is typically the norm in a city like Lagos is very different from what is the norm in a city like Abuja. But we tend to many times use, and I'm talking now about brands this time around, we tend to use that one brush to try to paint everyone. But the African consumer is not the way that we have envisaged the African consumer to be. We are all here sitting in this room over the last couple of days from different countries, and you find that every time you interact with someone, you learn something new. So imagine looking at the same material, the same communication material, it's not going to make sense to a lot of us. Something that is coming out of a country may not be the same as seen in another country.
Okay, quite interesting. And Leko, also to add to that, how would you also, from your own perspective, how would you say the African consumer is different from consumers in other parts of the world?
Okay, so I'm going to toe the line of America, but I'm also going to slightly differ in that when you see the African consumer, there are certain triggers, there are certain triggers that it's common to Africa, that does not necessarily exist, or if at all it exists, it's probably at a very minimal, almost unseen stage or level. And I'll give you one or two instances. Now, in Africa, we believe so much in religion, we believe so much in myth, we believe so much in fear, we believe so much in what the next person will say, and there are times when I have the opportunity to get out of Africa, for instance, and I wake up on a Sunday morning, the penchant is there that for me, I probably want to put on the cloth and say, let's go to church, if you understand what I mean. So there is something that makes us completely different. For instance, that never say never spirit, that African spirit, that spirit of resilience is dominant here. It's very dominant, and these are the things that these are the ingredients that businesses, brands look into in designing, offering, because they would design their offering in alignment with how we think and what we think. So to really answer your question, I think when you look at those triggers that are common to African and Africans, it makes us totally different from say, the guys in the West and all of them.
Okay, I just wanted to add a few things. I do agree that we have some similarities, but I think that the diversity of our continent is really in our differences. I remember yesterday in one of the panels that was held, I'm not sure who it was exactly now, who was talking about getting material, especially for a multinational. And I've worked in agencies and I've seen this happen several times, where Global can send a material that is not usable in your country. And you find out that when it goes to other countries, it's not usable material as well. So yes, that is true. There are similarities, but that similarity then doesn't make us one place where we can take one material, for example, and spread across the entire continent. And that's where I was coming from.
I agree.
Okay.
Can I also?
Okay, of course.
All right. So again, I agree. But look at it from this perspective. Can you hear me there?
Yeah.
Look at it from this perspective. There is something called the brand truth. Yeah? There's something called the brand truth. Put that on the left side. There's something called the universal truth. Put that on the right side. And there's something called local relevance. Yeah? I think what you're addressing is the local relevance. Mm-hmm. It does not take out the core, which is the fact that there are certain truths that are common, even to the entire universe, then to some people. So that's the point of view that I'm taking it from. That when you compare Africa as a market to the other market, there are certain things that puts us together, and those things. And again, I will tell you something. Those are the things that the businesses, that the brands are looking at. What is it that I can offer these guys that has some level of sameness? Yeah? Before you now go from country to country, now the way you communicate that same thing could be different. The way you activate that same thing could be different. I hope I'm trying to make a point there. But because we're saying the same thing in two different ways, that I agree that there's a local relevance, but I also think that as African we have something that unifies us, and we need to take advantage of that.
Okay, interesting. So also focusing on the Africans, right? Focusing on Africans, we know that a vast majority of consumer spending, as much as we're developing, it still happens in the informal markets, right? And so there's a huge population at the bottom of the pyramid, which sometimes can be challenges for several brands. So for you, knowing that, the consumer needs are changing every single day. I mean, of course, fundamental human needs will still be there, but in terms of what they require, their behavior, I mean, now they're armed with more information. They're living in a world where, making decisions is a bit easier than it was 10, 15 years ago. How would you say brands should respond to this changing needs and changing behavior? Because to speak to what Angarika mentioned earlier, because I also have experience working in agencies, that sometimes you also have some of this global markets who pass on material to the local market, say, this is what I think you should put out in Nigeria, or in Ghana, or in Rwanda. But the thing is, when you test it amongst these people, you realize that the meaning of maybe, say, sunshine, for example, in America is entirely different from what sunshine means in Lagos for the people who are Nigerians who are here, or in any part of Africa. So how do you think that brands should constantly respond to this changing consumer needs and behavior?
Can I take it? All right. Again, it speaks to what we just said. Now, the conversation is about retail. We need to ask ourselves, what exactly is retail? Yeah? What exactly is retail? Why is it that most multinational brands have now agreed to the fact that you can't win in the air again, you have to win on the ground? Why is TV losing its revenue globally? It's because you need to build human connection and you need to personalize it. Yeah? So here's the thing. You just said now that Africa is largely informal when it comes to retail. Yeah, I agree to that. You just said that Nigeria, Egypt, and South Africa are going to be big in terms of retailing as well. Yes, we agree. So the question now is that how can a brand, like you said, how can a brand take opportunity of all these possibilities? And for me, the simple answer is that you need to, and I'm being careful here because we need to differentiate communication with engagement. Because when you talk of communication, that is the situation where the HQ will have done something and they will say, oh yeah, you know. But when it comes to engagement, it's personal. It is unique to that environment. Yeah, there is a market called Mushi Market in Lagos, Nigeria, where it's like you just see a sea of tomatoes. How do you activate in that kind of environment? How do you deal with that consumer? How do you deal with that market? If you now say, I am selling tin tomato, that's tomato paste in a tin, how do you then compete with that lady in the market? How do you make that person come to you, yeah, or go to your modern shop rather than buying from that open market? So we need to drill down. Brands should begin to drill down. I read something on LinkedIn about 3 days ago, and I took that. I mean, it's really, I've been thinking about it over and over again. There is a woman on the street. She sells moi moi. I don't know how to explain moi moi in English. I'm sorry. Just forgive me. You know, and the lady said, when she's going in the morning, the woman will say, my daughter, good morning to you. You will succeed today. Yeah? Meanwhile, that the aroma of the moi moi is like everywhere in the hair. So later, oh, thank you, Ma. She will go. And then she'll like send the brother to her later that, oh, I've kept some moi moi for you. Don't forget to pick it up when you are coming back. It's not free, but it's showing that I care about you. I've kept some for you. So when you're coming back from work, take it. Yeah. It's now take that woman on the street. Take her as a brand owner. You understand? When brands and businesses begin to think like that woman, who is so concerned, so passionate about the consumer, then they will be able to respond adequately to the opportunities that we have in the retail space at this moment. But right now, what we are just doing is that it's just like the moment I put a banner up or I do this and everything, we think we can succeed that way. We cannot.
Okay, interesting. So, Angelika, just riding on the back of what he just said, because sometimes we make the mistake of focusing on, okay, what can brands do, and forgetting that there are also other factors that might come into play. So looking at recency effects, for example, and the impact it has on disposable income, for example, when inflation comes down and people still believe that it's still high, right? You know, how can brands address it from that point of view? Yeah.
Okay, so I think that the entire conversation we're having about winning on the ground is really about the individuals that we're selling to. And these individuals, there are inner motivations that drive them. And I think that for the average African consumer, they're driven by two things, fear and hope. And because of those two things that they're driven by, they make their purchasing decisions based on those factors. Of course, we also know that there are other things that are involved. For instance, are you, for example, at the bottom of the pyramid? And honestly, I know that that's the conversation globally, but I think that also putting people at the bottom of a pyramid, you know, also comes off a bit condescending. I would say people who are not able to afford, you know, a certain category of products. But then you also find out that the African consumer as well is evolving. So you find that the middle class, for example, is growing at an accelerated rate. And as a result of that, the consumer is able to buy more things because of his aspirations, because of his hopes, because of his dreams. He's able to buy more things. Now, how can brands then take advantage of the recency effect? Now, there are three things that I would like for us to just consider. First of all is the primary effect. The primary effect then means that a brand is able to engage with that consumer first time around. So every time someone, for instance, thinks of a a drink. They think of Coca-Cola, for example. It means that it was the first time I ever thought about having a drink, it was Coca-Cola that I saw. So that's the primary effect. Now, the recency effect then says to me, do I see Coca-Cola's messaging on frequently? And frequently would then mean that I'm walking on the road or on the street and I see an ad, or I open up a magazine and I see an ad, or I listen to the radio and I hear, a message. Now, those type of things, the consistency of the messaging is what keeps the brand relevant in my mind. But there's a third side of things, which is the familiarity effect. The familiarity effect means that a particular message is being told over and over and over again, that a person filters and doesn't, so you've seen a particular message every time. So what that then means for you is that you don't really take that message anymore because you're like, okay, this is familiar to me, and you just walk away. So the thing about brands and taking advantage of the recency effect is, one, consistency and continuity, and then two, to ensure that the messaging that they're delivering is not the exact same messaging, because it has a tendency to lose its effect on the people that they are talking to. Yeah.
Okay, I like the fact that she talks about inner motivations and things that also drive consumers in Africa. And I was looking at a report, I think it was a Nielsen report last year, that talked about prosperity and confidence being high motivation drivers for African consumers. And I heard the interesting part. 66% of consumers did say that they'll be willing to try a new product, but 12% actually have the disposable income. So as a people, we are, even if we don't have it, we believe we would have it. Yes. And then we are open to actually trying this out. So looking at that prosperity, because, I also saw another report that says that, hardly would you say an African that would say that he would not make it, right? There's the concept of the village man, that the African man comes from the village. And when he is going into the city, he's going into the city to come back and let his people know that he has arrived and that he has succeeded, right? So prosperity still comes strong. So looking at that as that strong motivation driver, do you think that African brands are doing enough in terms of the way that they're engaging, they're communicating, they're interacting with us as Africans? Or do you think there's still more opportunity, using these strong drivers to connect?
Well, I think there's more opportunity. I think that a lot of African brands don't really understand the consumers that they're speaking to. R&D is very low, I would say. I think that the companies or the brands that even invest in that regard are multinationals who then try to understand the African consumer and is selling to them or is communicating with them in a manner that they care about. But African brands, there's a lot that I do believe that we need to learn from there, because there is no way that Lekan just talked about the people and how the people are the heart of whatever it is that we're doing as brands and as communicators. Now, how is it that we're able to talk to people if we don't even understand who they are, what they're trying to achieve, what their aspirations are, where they're going? How can we even be proactive with them if we don't know exactly who these people are? So I do believe that there's a lot of opportunity for us to really understand who it is that we're speaking to and what really drives them to make the decisions that they're making, especially for us communicators, if it's a purchasing decision or if it's a buying decision. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves, and just as I had said before, not just about ourselves from a holistic standpoint, but also from a community standpoint, because the way you speak to a country is different from the way you speak to a small category of people, because you also find that within countries there are There are high level cities, there are mid-tier cities, then there are lower tier cities. It would be impossible for a campaign, for example, to succeed if you're using it in a highbrow center or community, as against when you're using the same messaging for a mid-tier or lower tier category of people. Okay.
Interesting. So over to you, Mr. Lekon. Talking about people now, we can also see that from some global brands, if you notice, there's this huge mega trend that has been happening over time, which is local love. So now you see a lot of brands now trying to localize their content. They're trying to localize their messages. Even huge brands as huge as Nike, and then you're looking at some of the things that they're putting out there, and then you're wondering, oh wow, this speaks to us. So back in the day, for retailers and for manufacturers, it was route to market, distribution, right? But now it's looking like it's more about consumer insights, understanding the consumers deeper, and innovation. Like, what's your take on this? Do you think businesses, retailers, manufacturers, brands should invest more in consumer insights and innovation, knowing that, innovation in some cases fail, right? So it's a huge investment, or just focus on the good old, ensure that we have the market, we have the distribution sorted, and we're good to go.
Okay, first and foremost, when it comes to innovation, brands should not be afraid to fail. They should be bold about it. Yeah. I'm very happy that you said 5 years ago, it's all about route to market. As a matter of fact, it's not even about route to market alone, it's also about speed to the market. Yeah? But now it's about the route to the mind and the speed to the mind. Share of voice, share of mind, before you now get to share of pocket. Nike is a very good example, but let me even go into entertainment. You'd see now that the big producers out there are coming in here, to tap into the opportunity. They have to localize it. So without saying much, that is the way to go. Innovation is the way to go. Innovation that will fit the local scenario, is the way to go. And whether we like it or not, it has started with brands, with consumer goods like your Nike and everything. It is getting into offerings like entertainment and everything. Who knows it's going to stop? We don't know.
Okay, yes. Talking about innovation and understanding consumers, how can, we say, yes, we need to understand. So how do we even understand these people? I was in Ghana a few weeks ago, and I met a gentleman who's building an amazing platform that helps him capture data at the point of purchase. So the guys who own kiosks, who own small shops, tools that can help them, put in their information, organize their P&L, but at the end of the day, he's capturing data at that point of consumption. So how do you think that, or what do you think that brands should do? Are there tools, or how would you say
let me tell
is
you
the
what,
best approach?
Let me tell you what we're doing. Even as a business, malls, all those hypermarkets and everything, we're having a discussion with them to say, for whoever comes there to buy, we need to also capture that same data. Who they are, what time they come to buy, what do they buy mostly, and why, and all of that. We are doing that across Nigeria. We've started now in Lagos, but it's going to go on. That's number one. Number two, what we are also doing is to say, you know what? The same way you have online influencers, can you have local influencers? I don't want to say much here, but again, let me ask the question. How do I convert a market, Yaloja, that's the head of the market, the woman head of the market. How do you convert that person to your continuous influencer? So innovation is not only done in the lab. It's not something that you have to press it. No, it's about thinking. And the conversation today is about, number one, how do you win on the ground? We've said that brands will succeed when they can win on the ground. The guys that are in control of the ground are the people. And these people respect their spaces so much. Yeah? And then you need to see how you can break into that space, how you can win them over. Do you understand? So it requires investment. So brands must be ready to invest. Brands must be ready, and they must be bold, like I said earlier, to attempt it, to say, you know what, how can I do it that my brand is the only one that will be accepted in this particular location, this particular market? Yeah. And every other one that comes like, and when you understand the nuances of the people, that we are coming back to that word once again, when you understand the way the people think, you will find out that the word of mouth is very powerful. Yeah? If the Iyaloja gives just one simple instruction, the entire market will comply. How are brands taking advantage of that?
Yeah, so I like that. Talking about the people, and I mean, you said it yourself that to win on the ground, you know, the people have all the power. So let's move to the people sitting and listening to us now to take a few questions. So we'll just take a few questions, and then the panelists would address the questions appropriately.
Thank you, Emeka. All right, questions? Right. Please remember to tell us your name, where you're from, and go straight to the point.
Good morning. My name is Blessing Ambrose from Nigeria. While you were talking, you said something about design your shop based on people and not based on your product. How do you go about that when you have different human beings with different needs? How do you design your product to suit everyone's need? Won't you be confused at a certain stage?
Thank you very much. I think I need to put that in perspective, in the proper context. When you go into a shop, or when you go into the mall, let's say, I don't want to mention brands name, yeah. You go into a super mall or hyper mall, I call it. What you typically see is the arrangement of products. Yeah? So let's assume that you go into the section where they are selling baby products. Yeah? Rather than using that space, rather than packing product on that space, imagine there is a door that each time you touch it, you say, hello, how you doing? And you are in that mall with your daughter. Where do you think your daughter will go the next time she gets to that mall? Do you understand what I'm saying now? So when I say needs, I'm not talking of individual needs. Like I said earlier on, there are unifiers. There are common denominators. There are triggers that are common to everybody sitting down here. Those are the triggers that brand should go after and activate. Because if you go into the store, you have your brand of soap. There are about 16, 17 other brands of soap that are there. And they're all doing the same way. Let me give you an example. About 5, 6 years ago, 7 almost, we ran an activation where I was working previously. You know what we did? We took a car right into the mall, as in right inside ShopRite. Not the environment, inside ShopRite. And we stack all our products in and out, you know, just to do stuff and everything. And we said that before you leave this mall, you could win this car. You can win this car. All you need to do is just 1, 2, 3. We started that campaign about 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, till today, they're still running it. And it will be the first time that a brand will take a car into the mall, which is talking about, again, that boldness I spoke about earlier on, and the need for you to understand trigger. If I know that success is a trigger for Africa, he mentioned the spirit of prosperity and everything. It's a common trigger. I will take advantage of that. I will use that to reach out to the others. So that's the point I was trying to make. I hope that clarifies.
Okay, we have another question here, and possibly the last question, because we need to wrap up this session and get on to the next.
I'm Kentis Tikolo from Kenya. I'm not sure mine is a question. I just want to link up what you said about the human scores and something that was said at the beginning on day one about us communicators not having a standard understanding of impact of strategy and so on. And I think you're spot on that communicators must start differentiating between just communicating and engaging. And I would like to just ask for permission to use your humankind scores as the different levels of measurement of impact, right from the lowest level to the highest level where we are changing behavior. And I believe if we do that, then as communicators, we will have the voice that we are looking for.
Thank you very much for that comment. And Emeka, we need to close the session. Maybe last words from panelists?
Okay, all right. So last words, Angelica, let's start with you first.
Okay. I think one of the things that I would like to close with is the fact that the reason I clamor, and I know that it's, I know it's something that a lot of people are also clamoring for personalization and differentiation, is that irrespective of our differences, our common denominator, there are certain things that still make us different. If I was going to, for instance, earlier about how to create products for a certain category of people, what that then would be what kind of person am I trying to speak to? So, for example, if the product is soap, I'm using that as an example, bar soap for the women folk, I'm not sure that just taking that bar soap to the market and then targeting women, would really do much good. It would be what kind of woman we're targeting. Is she the carrier woman? Is she a stay-at-home mom? Is she a woman who cares about her looks? Is she a woman who's earning between X and X? Is she a woman who's, those things are some of the things that can help when we are putting together a strategy on how we can reach certain kinds of people. So personalization and differentiation, and of course ensuring also that whatever it is that we're talking about is at the heart of what the people that we're talking to care about. There's a popular saying that attention span of people have reduced to about 10 seconds. I totally disagree, because people pay attention to what they care about. You find someone who's still scrolling on Twitter 2 hours and has not dropped his or her phone. People pay attention to what they care about, and that's the reason why if you're on social media, you have certain accounts that you have put on notification. So that means every time they post something, you go on there and you check what it is that they posted, because that's what you care about. But there are other things that we'll never pay attention to because they don't fit our individual needs.
All right, differentiation, personalization, great.
So, last words, just two things. Number one, right now, I think we appeal to psychography as against demography. We need to understand that. So we appeal to mindset. That's what I want to leave that as a response to what you said now. But my last word is actually for Nerve Africa, to say thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you for bringing this together. Thank you for bringing the entire African family in one table. We're going to follow you wherever you go. We'll support you. And we're saying that this is the best is yet to come for you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
On that brilliant note, we'll say thank you to our panelists and, of course, moderator, Emeka, Angelica, and Lekan. A round of applause. May I ask Perez Tigidam to join our distinguished panelist and moderator on stage for photographs. And while that is going on, just a quick recap, and it was some very brilliant points to note there. Differentiation and personalization, which comes back to the point I made earlier, putting a twist to what democracy is, communication for the people. Well, not democracy, but putting a twist to the meaning of democracy. And in this panel's interpretation, it then becomes communication for the people, by the people, to the people. And of course, this invariably creates a creative freedom, a freedom of expression, at the same time, at the heart and core of the people. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the distinguished panelists. Right. Moving on very quickly, and just before I invite the next speaker, I would like to quickly remind us that we've got a date, 7 p.m. Yes, you heard me. We've got a date, 7 p.m. at 1000 Hills, and we have the information displayed on the screens. Actually, 1000 Hills Distillery is at KK30 Avenue, and the landmark, as you would know, it's different from every other city you're used to. In Lagos, Nigeria, you probably find a number and the name of a street and the district, but in Kigali, it's just the number of the district. Okay, so 1000 Hills Distilleries is located at KK30 Avenue, and the landmark, just in case you are taking a taxi over there, a landmark you should mention to the driver if they are finding it challenging to navigate through the Google Maps. Just say to them, the bus park there, and just follow the road up the hill for about 1 minute. You definitely can miss it. It's a beautiful scenery to behold, and a phone number you can call should you need further direction. It's 7 p.m. And just to also put a twist and some level of excitement prior to our 7 p.m. date tonight, between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. later today, we have the pleasure to inform you that there will be a discounted bus tour around Kigali. Do I hear some excitement in the room? So the organizers of GAFCOM has been able to negotiate a $20 discount on a bus tour around the city of Kigali, and it's a 2-hour bus tour. Original price valued at $40, but because we think it's valuable for you to go away with a beautiful experience of the city of Kigali, we have a discounted tour around the city at $20. And if you are interested, just when we go on a break or when we proceed for the light bites, you can spot our lovely hostesses and people at the desk just on your way out of the hall. You can meet them at the desk to indicate your interest to go on this bus tour. Remember, the bus tour starts at 5 p.m. and the pickup point is actually the convention center here, and we think it's more central enough for everyone to converge here. And the bus tour, excitedly, will end at 1000 Hills. So it saves you the trouble of trying to find your way. So we would encourage you to please participate in the bus tour. 5 p.m. Pickup point is here at the convention center, and the it terminates or ends at 1000 Hills Distilleries, and we can take the party thereon from there. Ladies and gentlemen, with pleasure, I would like to invite for a keynote presentation Executive Creative Director, Commercial at Fortune Media in New York. Please make a resounding welcome for David Lennon.
Hi. I'm here to talk about content. I'll talk all the way through my career, so I'm going to get into that in a minute, but the key thing that you need to know is that right now around the world, journalism really needs support, and it needs money to fund it. Advertising has traditionally always been a big way to fund quality journalism, and what we've seen in Europe, what we've seen in the Americas and in Asia is that branded content can be a really important part of building long-term growth for news organisations. So, my talk today is on a world contended with content. And can we go into the deck if I press play? Okay. So, it's really weird seeing a massive picture of myself. I'm David Lennon. I'm the Executive Creative Director of Fortune Commercial. Previously, I worked at Vice, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and McCann Erickson. And before I go into what I'm about to talk about, the reason I'm here is that a few thousand people through my career, which is about 22 years now, have constantly pushed me to do better. Sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, but it's only through the efforts of these people, whether it's teammates, it's salespeople, it's internal clients, external clients. Everything I'm going to talk about has taken many, many hands to make it. And so I just want to acknowledge that before we go into it, because it's ridiculous for any creative director to say that I made this. It's always we. Well, let's not talk about them. Let's talk about me. Okay, so I started my career. I'm from Liverpool, by the way, so that's why my accent is weird. And this is only the second time that I've talked about my career. I actually went to Seoul in Korea, I think last year or the year before. But I don't like to give away secrets. And I think one of the interesting things that Perez told me about this was that Africa as a continent is really contending with how to grow their own media organizations. And so, because I know how much branded content can support that, I wanted to come and to speak to you. So, yeah, it's a little bit weird to be stood on the stage. So McCann Erickson, this is my first job. I was in university. I was at a degree show at the end of my university. I'd done an advertising course. I wanted to work in advertising. I'm from Liverpool. I didn't have any contacts in the industry. And I was just hoping to get into somewhere. And I got a 2-week placement at an ad agency that I really battled with to extend into 4 weeks and then a couple of months. And I eventually stayed at McCann Erickson for nearly 4 years. And I learned a lot. I had a mentor, David Bilcliffe, who taught me the value of learning everything in advertising and creativity. And so while I managed to sell a TV campaign and I'd done billboards, there was also a lot of work like below the line. So there was print ads, there was direct mail packs, there was even 47 versions of a dear valued customer letter for Barclays Bank that I had to write. And Henry, I think you took my notes, Henry. You took my notes off the lectern. It's just that I'm trying to cram 22 years into an hour, and it's a lot. So I might need them back just to keep me going. It was a piece of paper on here, so. Okay, so McCann Erickson, I basically learned the tools of the trade. In England, we called it an apprenticeship. And you don't really get that now because kids are so savvy. They go to school, thank you. They go to school and they've already got this idea of, I want to be this. I want to be this job title. And I didn't know. And I think the fact that I didn't know enabled me to explore creativity and to work out what I was good at. I was a copywriter, so we're concentrated on the message, but I'd started off as a graphic designer, and so there was always a blur in my career, and I kind of had my finger everywhere. I wanted to touch everything. So McCann Erickson was in Manchester. It was the biggest agency outside of London. The next logical step was London. I went down. I'd done a ton of job interviews, and weirdly ended up going to a financial company. I don't know why at the time. I actually got out of the subway. This is in the days before mobile phones. So I had to get out of the subway on the way to the job interview and call from a payphone and say I really, really didn't want to go to this job interview. I eventually get there, and the place blew me away. Bloomberg then, in 2000, looked like what most modern media companies look like now. Sir Norman Foster designed the offices. You walked in and there was glass everywhere, and you were seeing live TV. And it was an amazing experience for someone who hadn't seen that before. And I got sucked in, and I thought, I'm going to go there for and then I'm going to hop into like a cool design boutique or a cool small agency, and I'm going to work on all the cool stuff. I stayed at Bloomberg for 14 years. And the reason I stayed there is because I was constantly given new challenges. And 2 years into the job, I was working in the in-house marketing department. We were solely focused on Bloomberg. The head of sales for TV, Trevor Fellows, who's now at NBC in New York, he walked over. He's very posh. He's not like me. And he was like, "Hi, can anyone make me a TV commercial?" And I was like, "I've done that. I can do that." So he said he had £20,000. A client who advertised in Bloomberg magazines was interested in TV. They didn't have a TV commercial. Could we make them a TV commercial that would go on Bloomberg TV? So I was like, 20K, okay, let me think about it. And it was for a company called IFX. They're a foreign exchange company. And so I'd come up with this idea of we can spin a coin, and it's all about you don't know which way the coin's going to land, heads or tails. But as the coin spins, it would change. So it would start off as a pound coin. It would change into a franc, a Deutschmark, yen, and so on. And this coin, you'd just kind of see spinning, but you'd see different faces of different currencies around the world. And we liked the idea. We went to Soho in London. We spoke to some agencies, and we were going to make it all, shoot it in the studio, and create it in 3D, which at the time was like new technology, CGI. So I went back to Trevor. I was like, listen, we've got this idea, coin spins, we can do it, 20K, let's make it. He's like, I can't give you 20K. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, the 20K is what the advertiser's given us. I'm like, there's no way that you can make a TV commercial, a professional TV commercial for £20,000. It's ridiculous. I'd come from McCann Erickson where to make a TV commercial, you had 60 people on set. You're talking like $1 million commitments. I thought the money I was getting given was production, and it wasn't. It was the entire budget that he had. So I apologise for swearing, but I said, you're fucking mad. And I walked away and left him. Then an hour later, I come back, and I'd been working with a guy, Jim Piercy, who I had a long, long relationship with. 17 years I worked with him. And me and Jim had come up with this idea where if we went to the janitor's closet, the superintendent in the building, and if we took his drill, and if we put his drill in a vise, and if we set up Jim's little video camera, like a really small Sony flip cam, we could super glue the coins on top of the drill bit. We could press the drill. We could spin the coins, film it on Jim's camera, and Final Cut had just come out. He could edit all of this footage together. And so what ended up happening was that for £2,000 investment, because we had to record voiceovers and stuff, we still had the same ad, but at a super low budget. And so we said we could do it. We went off and done it. And it turned out 95% as it would have been as if we'd spent 20K. And that was the first TV commercial that I'd done at Bloomberg. At the time, we called it Custom Creative. We didn't know what else to call it. We made it for this client. But in a business that makes billions, as we start to make small amounts of money, 20K, 50K, 100K, people weren't really that bothered because we were a small sliver of a business that basically sold financial information. So the Bloomberg Professional Service, which is this computer behind, is basically a private internet that traders would use to move huge portfolios. And so we just kept building more and more content for clients. We were like an in-house agency, but we didn't like to use that term because we're a publisher, we're a media network, and we didn't want to anger any of the agency partners that we worked with. We didn't want to steal any business from them. We were just a route where we could make low-budget commercials for TV. We built this business up, and it started to go from $1 million a year to a couple of million a year. And then in 2007, Trevor Fellows got moved over to New York to head up TV ad sales for Bloomberg globally. I followed Trevor 6 months later because what Trevor wanted me to do was basically replicate the success that we'd had in London, but on a much bigger platform. And so that's what we did. It'd been my dream to live in New York. Since I was a kid in Liverpool, you grow up with posters on the walls of Liverpool to New York ferries from like the 1920s. And it had always been like this end destination that excited me. So when I got to move to New York, everything kind of exploded because it was a much bigger marketplace. There was more dollars at stake. And we thought that we could do something a little bit different. Part of my role at Bloomberg, as well as creating branded content, though, was creating marketing for Bloomberg. And so we spent many years making videos for Bloomberg Philanthropy, which was the CSR side of the business. And we'd do them kind of documentary style. We'd start to interview people. We were shooting on HD cams, which are like huge, big cameras. It would cost quite a lot because you'd then have to go off to Avid Suites to edit all of this together. But you'd end up with like really high quality work, but at a high quality or high cost price. So we wanted to take this documentary storytelling idea and we wanted to take it into the realm of TV. And so because Bloomberg had commercial breaks of 2 minutes, we started to sell in the idea of what if we created really short-form mini docs, we call them, where we take 60 seconds or 90 seconds or maybe a full 2 minutes and take over an ad break and tell a story rather than trying to sell an ad through. But at the same time, we were also scared, and this has come through in my career so many times, that something happens in the whole industry and you think it's going to impact you and you think everything's going to change. So when I actually landed in New York, I called Jim, who was in London, and, you know, I'd been thinking on the plane, and I said to him then, like, the internet's going to kill us, lad, because I thought that the TV work that we were going to do was going to get killed and pushed aside by all of the banner ads that everyone was doing. The fact that there was so much money that was now getting pushed into digital, and the perception at the time was that you could get more value for money throwing $1 million onto websites than you could throwing $1 million onto a TV station. So it seems stupid now because of the rise in online digital video, but right then in 2007, 2008, YouTube hadn't really had an impact. And so we were still creating long-form or short-form video, but it was getting shown on TV rather than online because the video players basically went up to the standard we needed. But then everything changed, and it's really weird because my belief is that editorial news organizations actually created the rise of branded content as we know it. And the reason they did that is because they got really pissed off with people with camera phones. What would happen in the past was that news organizations would send out photographers to go and photograph the news, even TV stations. They couldn't afford to have camera crews everywhere because the camera equipment was too expensive. And so what they'd do is they'd send out photographers. These photographers would go and snap a picture. So let's say there is a ship on fire in a port. They would take a beautiful photo of that happening. But what was happening in 2006, 7, and 8 was that people had started to use really low-res camera footage from their phones. And news organizations were kind of being pushed aside a little bit because people had video content when they only had photographs. So they turned around to the Canons and the Nikons and all the different camera makers and said, the digital cameras that you have need to start shooting video for us. And it's very weird. There was an importation rule that stated if any camera shot more than 12 minutes of video, even though it was primarily a standard camera, a photography camera, you would have to pay like really high importation dues. So what they did was Canon launched the 5D Mark II, which was the first camera to shoot digital video really well. But you could only shoot it in 12-minute bursts. But because we were talking about documentary storytelling, that didn't put me off. I was like, we can use this, because even in interviews, as much as we'd like to think that we can sit down with a subject and we can talk for an hour and get super engrossed and get immersed in the subject and kind of forget that the cameras are there and get really good performances from them, the reality is that a battery will go down in that light, or someone will start coughing over there, or a plane will go overhead, and you're constantly... No one really gives us an answer that's more than 12 minutes. And if they give us a 12-minute answer, we can just cut and then continue. So that's what we did. And it seems funny now because it's all changed again. But at the time, we would just be doing these interviews, and then we'd stop, we'd reload, and then we'd go again. This is one of the first ones that we've done. It was for Chase Bank. And I'm a big believer that there's great stories around you all the time. I'm also a huge believer in the fact that you don't need to pay talent to work with you. I think if you've got the right story and it's the right opportunity for that talent, that they're more than happy to come along with you. And so this is the Lower East Side in Manhattan. It's where I used to live. And in the bottom left-hand corner, that's Alphabet City. And a block from where I lived was a wine and cheese store. And so Chase wanted us to tell a story of small businesses across America. They were looking at a website, and I was like, we could do like video stories, we could do case studies, where rather than you kind of telling everyone what you do and how you work for small businesses, why don't we have them do, you know, a kind of testimonial campaign, but the whole focus is on them. And we're not going to have them really talk about your card, because that's implied. It's implied that they use Chase. Let's just have them talk about business and what it's like to run a small business, and what are the challenges they face and how they've overcome them, and who they serve in the community. And so this is the first video I'm going to play you.
Small business owners making their mark. Brought to you by Inc., the small business card from Chase. Make your mark with Inc.
Darren and I met at a community garden meeting.
I was a bit taken with her passion for talking about what she was building.
My original idea was to have a neighborhood wine store where people come and they tell me what they're going to make for dinner. Pizza? This is your pizza wine. Oh, linguine white clam sauce? This one. You've got to have this one. And that's what I do. I match people.
Beatrice's dream was to have this cheese shop.
The best thing I did for my wine shop was open the cheese shop. Oh, people loved it immediately. They just loved it.
And we made great friendships, and friendships that will last forever. The businesses were at the heart of it.
We wouldn't be here without our community.
We made a contribution to you and made it a better place for them.
I love it.
Brought to you by Inc., the small business card from Chase. Make your mark with Inc. Go to chase.com/Inc.
So there's two things to say about this. One, after we'd shot, the client turned around to us and said, you know, it's got to be in black and white, right? And I was like, what? We'd gone to this wine and cheese store, and trust me, the color cut of this is incredible. The food looks amazing, but cheese in gray doesn't really sell itself. The second thing is that the quality of this, because this is 2008, I believe, this is like 11 years ago. And so even from that footage, you can see that it's very jerky because they hadn't sorted out the sensors in the camera. Because it was essentially a photography camera that was used for digital video capture. So the technology gets better, but that was just how we started. Let's play. Trying to get back into this, Keme. If I play. Sorry. I overloaded Keme with so many slides and videos. It's my fault. Okay. Sorry, can you just go back to that slide? I pressed back. No, just go full, continue. No, go back to the, I'll go through. Okay, we're back. I'm pressing the wrong button up here. It's my fault, it's not yours. So we started to do these case studies, and one thing I'd say to anyone that's getting into branded content, especially if you're starting out and you're working with big brands, is it's tried and tested that if you do case studies where you've got their clients speaking about their services, then it's a win-win for everyone involved. We started to work with a ton of really big Fortune 500 companies at Bloomberg, where we were going out and we were showcasing the breadth of industries that these companies cover. The business started to take off, but there was still this pull of me working on Bloomberg products and services as well. And I was constantly fighting to just say, listen, let me run this business 100% focused on branded content, and let me push aside the marketing duties that I had. I had different managers through my career. One of them, who didn't like me, said, "You're the most revenue-focused creative that I've ever met." And it was meant really disdainfully, but to me, it was like getting an Oscar, because I knew even back then, if there's no money coming through the door, it doesn't matter how creative you are and how many good ideas you've got in your head, nothing's ever going to get made. And there's nothing worse for me than just wasted talent that sat around doing nothing. And so everything that we ever did was always driven around, will this drive long-term growth? So it was never about short-term targets. It wasn't about trying to make as much money from clients as possible. It was constantly about how we can work with this client, how we can deliver real value, and then how can we make them come back for more? Because it's so much easier to keep clients than it is to constantly go out and win new ones. And so this statement for me was like, at the time, like a pat on the back, even though it wasn't meant that way. Another thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll go into with my chat with Ferdy later, is there's constantly talk in the industry of, oh, everyone needs to be on this platform, everyone needs to use this technology, and people kind of get herded and run around and follow and try to do things, and there's only certain brands that can really pull off being pioneers, and everyone else kind of gets it wrong. But you've always got to have an ear to the ground, and a week before we were due to go out and shoot the first 90-second spot for GE Capital, which was at the time the investment arm of GE. We were going to a vineyard, and we were trying to up the level of the work that we were doing. So instead of just turning up with these Canon D5 cameras, it was like, what else can we use? Can we put a camera on a dolly and make it slide and give that kind of Hollywood feel to the stuff that we were shooting? And for the vineyard, Duckhorn is in Napa Valley. It's beautiful. And I'd come up with this idea for a shot, and I'm not a cameraman, but I was like, what I wanted to do is have the lens go across the top of the vines. And so we were trying to work out how we could hire like the biggest jib arm with the camera on the end in California and take it to the shoot so we could get this shot. And I was messing around, and I think it was YouTube at the time, and I'd seen this skateboard video, and it was in Venice Beach in California, and it was in a concrete skate park, so let's say it's the size of this room pretty much, and the guy's skateboarding around, and this camera is behind him and it's following him. And at first I thought the camera was on a wire, but then the camera started to turn around and follow him over, and it was going up and down. And I was like, well, maybe it's like a multi-directional arm, like a jib arm that is controlled, but it's really smooth. And I did not, for the life of me, know what I was looking at, but what I was looking at was absolutely incredible. At the end of the video, it just had a little tag that said Copter Kids. And so I called these guys up, and they were in Bali on a shoot for Billabong, I think. I woke them up, and I'm like, did you guys shoot this video that I'm watching on YouTube? They were like, yeah. I'm like, how did you do it? And they were like, so you've seen the copter? And I'm like, I don't understand, because it's not a helicopter, because that helicopter would have cut the head off the skateboarder. It was so close. And he's like, well, we've got this helicopter. It's a professional grade model helicopter, and it was about that big. It cost $15,000. And the two guys who were called the Copter Kids, one of them was an editor, and the other one was an X Games cross-country skier. And they'd always talked about, wouldn't it be great if you could get a camera to follow the skier down a mountain, going over moguls, and kind of film the whole run in one shot. And they were from Reno in Nevada, and they flew these super expensive helicopters for fun. And then one day, they were just out there playing with it, and they were like, you know that Canon D5 camera? Because the HD cameras were huge. They were heavy and huge. They were like, it's only about that big. It only weighs a couple of pounds. What if we stuck it on the helicopter? So they started to think it through, and they were like, it's great, but it would be very static, and, you know, these things don't turn very well. So they decided to build their own motion-controlled mount for the camera, and this thing, from what I know, from what I understand, basically become the first fully functional drone. They've been working for 6 months. They've done a car commercial. They were in Bali when I called them in Indonesia. And now I was like, listen, we're filming in San Francisco next week. Can you come? He said, yes. And I was just like amazed, because I knew that even most ad companies weren't onto this at the time. And we were going to take a piece of technology that had worked so well in the skateboard bowl and use it for the vineyard shoot. So again, this is, I think, 2008, 2009. And this is the GE Capital Duck-Owned Vineyards 90-second spot that we shot that was still TV first.
Founders, Dan and Margaret Duckhorn, who decided with a small group of investors how great it would be to have a small, relatively new handcrafted winery. Again, we were about the 39th or 40th winery in the valley, and focus on Merlot. We started out with the best vintage of the decade. 1978 set most of the bars in the California wine industry as one of those classic vintages. And we grew the winery kind of grape by grape, if you will. We're agriculture. We live and die with what Mother Nature deals to us. We're in the manufacturing business. We put the raw products together, and we're sales and entertainment. We have to try to create a connection between our customers and our products. Our wine's been served over many administrations in the White House. We've now expanded into a flock of waterfowl themes that make up the Duckhorn Wine Company. It's a wonderful source of pride. Back in 2007, when the winery had changed hands, our banking business partner, GE Capital, provided a lot of guidance and support in the back, clearly the capital and some connections and some advice, but then step back and let the winemaking team really execute the transition out in the market. We ended up with a fairly flawless transition. If you look at the great wine houses of the rest of the world, they're in the hundreds of years. GE Capital understands that that's the vision you have to have and the future relationships we're going to need to get there.
So we were really happy with this spot. The client loved it. And they were asking about that vineyard shot at the end, and they were, you know, we explained to them how we got it, and they were like, has anyone done it before? I'm like, I don't think so. I call the Copter Kids. I'm like, you haven't shot in a vineyard before? They were like, no. If we haven't shot it, it probably hasn't been done. So that was like a little feather in our cap, and we basically used that and the rest of the GE campaign to really sell ourselves as a team that could go and work with huge brands, that could kind of stay within brand guidelines, and yet produce this documentary style storytelling that can sit on TV. And I think this was one of the first ones that we also ran online as well. And it performed really well. Even back then, we weren't really bothered with impressions. We were always looking at how long did people watch this for? You know, did they turn off at any point? And that one performed really well for us. So, can we go back to me? Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So, in my last couple of years at Bloomberg, the word native advertising started to come in. People had started to do kind of interactive hubs, if you will, like small hub sites for content. Not many people were doing video content in the way that we were, but a lot of publishers had started to build mini sites and mini hubs for brands, and they were calling it native content, and they were putting their own stamp on it. Now, everything that we had done to date had always been white label. We hadn't said Bloomberg and GE Capital present, but native advertising was where brands wanted to sit right alongside media companies and get a kind of reflected glory, and also tap into their storytelling prowess to really attack their audience in the, you know, in the same way that the editorial would. And so, you know, we were saying at the time, like, we do native content, we just called it something else and we didn't put our logo on it. So we were late to the game in terms of how we label it, but we'd actually been doing it for years. Trevor left and went to the Wall Street Journal to be Chief Revenue Officer, and 13 months and 2 weeks, when I was contractually able, I joined him. And Jim, who I worked with in London, he come over and he worked out of the London office. And what we found was a big content team that was primarily focused in print, maybe a little bit of digital, not really video. And we needed to rethink the studio. We hired Farrah Warner, who was the branded editorial director. We had a dedicated branded content salesperson, Jordan Hyman. And we worked for an amazing leader, Sarah Dale, who ran the studio itself. And so with the creative director, the branded editorial director, and the salesperson, and a great leader above us, we knew that we had a huge opportunity. At the time when we got there, the Wall Street Journal was making $12 million a year in revenue, but they were spending this is for branded content, but they were spending $6 million to make the 12. And I knew from my time with Trevor that going all the way back to the spin and drill bit for IFX Markets with the coins, you know, he got 20K, I took 10%, and that 10% rule kind of served us all the way through Bloomberg. So when we got to the Wall Street Journal, we really didn't understand when we were spending, you know, 30, 40, 50, and sometimes even more % of the revenue to make content for clients. So we looked at what was working and what wasn't, changes were made, and we were then looking for the next opportunity. And we kind of called it rigging the content game, because we'd had years and years and years experience, and yet we were now at a brand who was trailing T-Brand Studios, The Atlantic, and all of the big networks in branded content. They'd raced ahead. T-Brand had done a piece called, it was for Netflix, for Orange is the New Black, and it was heavily awarded. Everyone in the industry was talking about it, and it was a really immersive, deep dive hub into women in the US prison system. And it was a complementary piece, a factual complementary piece to the fictional TV show that was launching on Netflix. It got a lot of attention, people loved it, and even editorial journalists started to talk about the merits of how a brand can work with a content studio to produce something that is editorial quality. So we needed something special. And this is the part where the Medellin cartel changed my life. We'd heard rumors that Netflix were going to do a show based on Pablo Escobar, and one of the salespeople, Joanna Meyer-Jones, who's now at Atlantic, raced over to me one day, and she's like, I think I've got us on the RFP. I think I can get us briefed to work with Netflix. Now, we knew that we hadn't done any entertainment work. All of my own portfolio that I'd built with Jim at Bloomberg was mainly B2B. And here we are with essentially like the gold medal of B2C, at least at the time, in branded content. They were doing the most interesting branded content sites. T-Brand had done Orange is the New Black. The Atlantic had done House of Cards. And it was almost like this championship belt that if you could wear it with Netflix, you were like at this elite level of branded content. So we come up with a ton of ideas, and nothing really happened. We were thinking of it through a video lens. We sent ideas off, and we kept hassling them. And about 2 or 3 months later, they were like, we can jump on a call with you. And I was like, okay. So me and Jordan jumped on the call at 6 p.m. on a Friday night. And the client was based then in San Francisco. And they were like, listen, we've seen all these video ideas that you've come up with. And we were like, what was it like to live with Pablo Escobar in the 80s? You know, where did he spend all of his money and what's happened to it? We were constantly thinking of ways in video that we could bring the story to life. We'd sent them storyboards. And they got on the phone and they basically said, listen, we're going to give you $200K. We like the ideas. We've already decided to go with other media partners. But we're going to give you $200K in advertising because you worked on this when you didn't even have a brief. And we just like the way that you think, and we're going to put you on the list for next time. But we knew that this was the first season of Narcos. We knew that the show was going to be a hit. And so I remember pressing the button and muting the call. And I just turned around to Jordan, and again, apologies for swearing, but I was like, fucking no way. We need this. We're not going to take that money unless they give us a chance. And so we all muted, and I just said, listen, we love the fact that you want to give us money, but we're actually going to say no unless you've let us fairly pitch on this. And they were like, well, it's impossible. We're so far down the line. And in fact, next Tuesday, and this was the Friday, next Tuesday, we're going to see design locks of the sites that maybe 2 or 3 of the media partners that we're going to go with are going to build. And at this point, we had nothing. And I was like, listen, we'll see you on Tuesday. We'll have a design lock site with all the content ideas for you. They were like, you're crazy. I was like, I know. We'll speak to you Tuesday. Goodbye. We put the phone down on them. And we're like, wow. So I called up a lot of contacts that I had, and these are external vendors. So we had a small team internally, supported by a larger print team and digital team. But I had loyal friends and acquaintances who have film production capabilities, who are amazing digital designers. We had contacts who were journalists, and it was like, we can put this whole thing together. So what we did was come up with this concept called Cocainomics. So we're at the Wall Street Journal, and we thought, how would the Wall Street Journal editorially approach the story of the Medellin cartel? Well, we'd approach it the same way that we'd approach a story about Apple or Microsoft or Adidas or anyone. We'd look at the business, we'd look at the history, we'd look at how they managed to go from a small enterprise to a big enterprise, who were the key players, how they did it, what was the distribution model, the real kind of insider's take and perspective on the business model of this global drug cartel. And that's what Cocainomics was. It was the economy of cocaine told through the lens of the Medellin cartel. One of the things that we wanted to do differently was find a way, instead of being a companion piece, which is real life and factual, next to a fictional show, we wanted to see if we could thread the show into the content that we made so that it would feel a little bit more integrated, and it was something that people hadn't done before. And so I'm going to show you 3 things from Cokainomics. It's the best piece of work that I've ever done. And it really did kind of change my life, because it then led on to so many more opportunities, and it did for the rest of the team. But essentially what you see now is the work of Sarah and Jordan and Farah and myself over the weekend, and about 95% of this website was there on a wireframe by Monday morning. We had a company called the Charles NYC, which is worth writing down, the Charles NYC, who are a digital design agency, a brother and sister from Manchester in England, who are based in Soho in New York. And we briefed them, we give them the wireframe, and they come back with this design, which was on brand for Netflix. So, Kemi, if you want to go to the website. The first thing we wanted to do is hit people on the landing page. So, when you loaded up, you were faced with the title, Cokainomics. Now, this title wasn't an animation. Don't do it yet, Kemi. What you see is 57,000 individual white pixels. And what we decided with the Charles is that it would be great if we could literally take people into the cocaine experience straight away. So, Kemi, if you use your mouse, if you hold onto the mouse and drag it across the title, you could cut lines of cocaine from that title. Now, no one had ever done anything like this before. This was WebGL animation. This is like 2015. But just the landing page alone, all of a sudden started to go super viral when we launched the site. Okay, so if we scroll down. And what we did was we come up with a story of how the Medellin cartel transformed what was then a $1 million enterprise into a $1 billion global enterprise. And they operated for 10 years without the US government even knowing they really existed. And so if we page down, we had Peter Green, who was a forensic financial reporter from Bloomberg, that Farah knew. And we got him to look at this cartel like a business model, if we scroll down. So that would take the reader into the site and give you the facts of who they were. And then what we wanted to do was bring in the main characters. So this is the actor Wagner Moura, who plays Pablo Escobar in the show. And so we just wanted to showcase one of the key people who was going to be in all the key art of the ads for Netflix's new show that was launching. Keep going down. Keep going. And then here we had a clip from the show. So what we were doing in this section of the story is talking about how the Medellin cartel bribed their way into existence. And so these were smugglers. There was 3 or 4 key people in the Medellin cartel, and they were smuggling emeralds. Pablo Escobar was a car robber who smuggled electronics. And this scene, which won't play because of the Wi-Fi, but this scene is where his trucks get stopped on a bridge, and the soldiers think they've caught them in the act. And then he basically goes around every single soldier and talks about how is your mum Maria, and how is your daughter, and how is your son. And he knew everyone's families, and so they were scared of him. And that's how he managed to turn the cartel huge. He basically gives the people the offer of plata or plomo: take my silver or take my lead. Be bribed or we're going to kill you. And so juxtaposing the fictional portrayal of their power with like long-form, in-depth journalism really worked well. Let's keep scrolling down. Then we wanted to take people into how they got the drugs into America and beyond, so keep going down. So we had animated interactive maps where you could click on different decades on the right-hand side, and you'd see how they were constantly changing up the smuggling patterns as they adapted to the DEA and how they were trying to track and stop the flow of drugs into America. Okay, and if we keep going down. Keep going. Again, we bring in more shots of the show. Keep going. And then we got lucky. So this whole project took 8 weeks, from that phone call on a Friday to this site being finished. And maybe 2 weeks in, we were speaking to the Netflix client, and they were saying, Steve Murphy and Javier Pina, who are the 2 DEA agents who are featured in the show, they're actually going to Vice, and they let it slip then that they were working with Vice. And I was like, so these guys are going to be in New York. Is there any way we could grab them for an hour? We'd love to do a video with the real-life DEA agents in the midst of a real-life retelling of the Medellin cartel's story for your show. They were like, Vice is paying them a talent fee, and da-da-da-da. And I was like, listen, just get them to us. Give us them for an hour. We managed to speak to them, and we just said, listen, we'd love to come to your homes. We'd love to go through all of your mementos from this time. But anything that you can bring to New York with you that we can film would be great. But we knew that their story was going to be so crazy because they were sent to Medellin in late 80s and then Murphy in 91, I think. And they were tracking Pablo Escobar and trying to kill him. And so we knew their story was going to be so crazy that we could just film them on a black background and it would be engaging enough. But what actually happened was they come to us with a stack of Steve Murphy's own personal photographs from the missions that he went out on. And so he took a personal camera and was taking snaps everywhere he went. And I'll show you a video later where as we were interviewing him and as I'm going through this literal stack of like 300 photos, like there's moments in your career that you remember, but this was one where I was like, oh my God. They were talking about the day that Escobar escaped prison and they went in on helicopters to see if there was any sign of him and to get on his trail. And as they were talking about going into the prison and being interviewed, because me and Peter, the journalist, were tag team in the interview, I was going through this stack of photos and literally this guy took a photo every 10 yards. And so as they were talking about walking into the jail and going into his room and how he basically self-built this prison for himself, we had all of these photos, and they've been doing DEA talks around America behind closed doors to other police. And so I was like, to our filmmaker, Richard Butterworth, who's incredible, he's now at CNN, I'm like, is there any way that we could do like a kind of photo carousel effect? And I was just thinking something super basic, but we'll go into that video later. But we managed to get them for an hour. I kept them in the chairs for an hour and a half, and then we took them for steak afterwards. And they were really nice guys, but their story, which you'll hear a little bit of later, is incredible. Keep moving down. So we got video into the experience. We had a little bit of animation on the site, but we didn't go too heavy. Keep going down. Keep going down. We also wanted to show the global impact of cartels. So it wasn't just a Colombia story. There's many cities and towns around the world that have been severely affected by the drug trade. And so we wanted to show the effects in America, in Mexico, in Africa, and in Europe. And then we also wanted to show a fact bar on the right who profits from the drug trade. And so even if you don't buy drugs, even if you hate drugs, there's still things that are in your everyday life, such as cosmetic surgery, which have actually had massive boosts because of the drug trade for different ways. So let's keep going down. So there's lots of things that people get engaged with. And then the last part of it was, or second to last, was really important to us. And so Netflix were telling the story of Pablo Escobar with a drug cartel that killed directly thousands, and then around the world, the effect of pumping billions of dollars of high-priced drugs into society has meant that like billions of people have been affected. And so it's quite a negative story. And we knew that there was more to Medellin, there was more to Colombia than just cocaine, obviously. And so we said to Netflix, rather than just focusing on Medellin then, we also want to do a part that covers Medellin now. What's it like to live there now? What's the post-Pablo economy in Medellin? And so we got really lucky. We got a great journalist, Farah Warner, who was local, Colombian, and she started to open doors. And, we were basically like two people with cameras and a sound person, and that was our crew. And I was like, let's go to Medellin. Let's go and video people in Medellin talking about what it was like to live through that time and what it's like there now. And let's see if we can tell a positive story about Medellin's progress. And as we researched it, we realized that the city had completely transformed. So for us, it was really important to show the upside of how a city that was essentially controlled by narco-terrorism had transformed itself into an amazing city and a leader within the whole of South America. So if we keep going down, there's a video which we'll play shortly. And then at the end of this experience, there's two more things. One is a quiz, and then the other thing at the end of the webpage is we also put stories just below this quiz that were drug stories and stories about the global drug trade from the Wall Street Journal itself. So there was a tie back into the Wall Street Journal. This site lived within the Wall Street Journal. So there was this quiz at the end, which we thought would be fun. And so after people had read and watched the videos, we wanted to test the knowledge, but we wanted to put Jeopardy in there. And so once you click on the button to test your knowledge, it starts, and there's a timer. And for every question, you've got 30 seconds to answer. And so for this one, the answer is, at its height, the Medellin cartel brought in 60 million profit every day, most of it in cash. Who did Escobar personally hire to protect it? The answer is local accountants. Click. So we've done well. We move on to the next one. And so on. There was 10 questions, but if you got it wrong, so the answer for this is starving rats, but don't hit that. Hit DEA agents. You get killed. So you had to answer all 10 questions perfectly to make it all the way through the quiz. If you got through, I think, the third or fourth question, you got a bonus clip from the show that wasn't shown anywhere else at the time. And basically, you could unlock almost like a computer game, like different rewards, different checkpoints all the way through. This was something that was super popular, and because it was interactive and people could share it, we've seen all sorts of people, challenging their friends, and it become a really interesting way to get into the site. You'll also see on here that we had links to share every individual piece of content, and so every section of the site, whether it was a video, it was a written report, it was an interactive slideshow, you could share that, and so we could bring people into the site because there's a hell of a lot of content there. We can bring people into the site and we can keep them, and that became a mantra for us at the Wall Street Journal. It was once we bring people into our content universe, we want to keep them there. And so the video should be that good that it will drive you to read the article. The article should be that good that you pay attention to the infographics. The infographics should be that good that you take the quiz. The quiz should be that good that you share it with your friends. And then everyone kind of gets their own experience. And so whichever point that you come in on, whichever point that someone had shared that to you on social media, it was a way to engage. And like I say, it was the most fun I've ever had in an 8-week period. It was crazy. The stars literally aligned. Like, we had Netflix, which is one of the biggest brands globally, with a hit show that hadn't started. This was for the season 1 launch. We knew the show was going to be great. And we had the perfect canvas, being the Wall Street Journal, to tell this business story in a really interesting way. We won a ton of awards for it. I remember going to college. My college tutor had gotten a D&AD annual, John Sherfield, and I always wanted the D&AD pencil, and I never thought, working in branded content, that we'd have the money and the time to produce something that was award-worthy. But we got 2 wooden pencils for this. We got a Cannes Line, and we also got a Webby, and then I think there's literally about 60, 70 other awards just for this. People were calling us up and asking us to enter their awards. It was crazy. We blew up overnight. And the reason that I wanted to take you through this whole experience is because we gambled everything on this. I'd built up, and this is really important when you're building out a branded content team, I'd built up enough trust and loyalty with Trevor that I said to him, I need all the money. whatever money that Netflix gives us, I need to spend on production, because we need to do one huge portfolio piece that will make a statement that can then allow us to go off and win 5 or 6 different clients. We'd done that all the way through Bloomberg. We'd go into an industry, we'd make a video, or we'd do a digital page or whatever, and that one piece would get us 5 clients off the back of it. So it was a worthwhile investment. What we didn't know was how big it was going to blow up. Ad Age put it as the best branded content of 2015. And instead of us calling clients, the clients started to call Wall Street Journal Custom Studios. And we just had this crazy ride for 18 months. We were at 12 million when we walked in the door, and 18 months later, for 12 million, we were spending 6 to make it. 18 months later, we were only spending 6.5 million in production, but we were now making 70 million a year in revenue. We had client renewal rate at Wall Street Journal Custom Studios in 2016 on Media Radar of 73%. So if you think about your business, whether you're an ad agency, whether you're a branded content studio, if you can achieve 73% client renewal, you have got long-term growth sewn up, because you've got clients that constantly want to work with you. And you know what it's like, you're either, it's either working and you're going up or you're going down. There's no plateau anymore in business. There's always too much competition out there. And so this piece, I think we stopped counting at around $20 million, the amount of revenue that this individually drove, where clients were calling us up and saying, we want you to do something like Cokainomics for us. And these weren't like cool B2C companies. These were like crazy Republican, like mutual funds who were super conservative and who just liked the way that we took a creative idea and really blown it out. So that's Cokainomics. Sorry, 1 second. I wanted to show you 2 videos as well from here. So I'm going to show you the DEA agent's interview. In fact, I'm not going to show you. This is the video that we shot in Medellin.
Bueno, la historia hay que contarla como es, como sucedió. Y la historia dice que en Medellín vivió un hombre muy bueno que se llamaba Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar, pues, construyó este barrio. Quería decir que en Medellín cada persona tenía derecho a tener una vivienda digna y no vivir en un rancho.
Nosotros lo recordamos como una gran persona, como una persona que fue el único aquí en Colombia que se acordó de los pobres, que se acordó que las familias necesitaban un hogar, un techo para vivir.
Nosotros le contamos a nuestros niños quién era Pablo Escobar. Le decimos que Pablo Escobar fue un hombre que cometió muchos errores, pero que le regaló esta casa a la mamá de él.
Es decir, Medellín perdió generaciones de jóvenes por la violencia. La experiencia de la violencia no es una experiencia que se vivió por televisión, sino que se vivió en las calles y que se vivió en los barrios y se vivió en las familias.
I grew up in a neighborhood located in El Poblado, in Medellín. My parents, they didn't tell me about Pablo Escobar and all that terrible story until I was perhaps 8, 10, 12. I am aware that the city still has many problems, and there is a high perception of insecurity.
I'm going to cut this a little bit short because we need to move things on, but we arrived there for 4 days in Medellin, and one of the things that you're really going to need for negotiation is how to convince people of the story that you want to tell and then get them to participate. And so on the ground in Medellin, we got introduced to someone who could get us into a talk that the mayor was going to give at City Hall. And so we went to speak to him at this event, and he actually invited us to City Hall. This thing didn't take like weeks or months to sort out. We told him the story that we wanted to tell. He knew the Netflix show was coming, and we said this is the opportunity to talk about the positivity and the kind of pull away from Medellin being like the world's murder capital in 1991 to being one of the safest cities in South America. And so he then helped open lots more doors. We went around the city and we spoke to everyone from the people who were in Barrio Pablo Escobar, which is the township that Pablo built, all the way down to art galleries, City Hall, and senior business people. And it was just a lesson in you don't need everything planned. You've got to be uncomfortable. And we've constantly got this phrase that we keep using that if you're doing branded content and you're doing it really well, then you should constantly be in fear that it's all going to go wrong, because you want to be a little bit more ambitious than your budget every single time. And we got taken into Comuna 13, which is where this hip-hop collective had started to take kids out of gangs and get them into graffiti. And, you know, at the time we were surrounded by kids with Uzi magazines that are kind of the security within the city. But it was just, it's an opportunity to tell great stories when you get to places like this, and you've just got to really push yourself and get out there and speak to people. And so even the drivers in our cars were tipping us off to people that we could speak to. Okay, so business takes off, and it's literally planes, trains, and automobiles. Like the whole team that we had around video, like we were off doing like 3 or 4 different shoots every month. We were working with clients like Delta Airlines, Siemens for trains. We'd won Alfa Romeo business. Everything was going great, and then things kind of changed. Morgan Stanley was one of the last pieces of work that we did. I'm not going to have time to play it, but if you go to the site, Morgan Stanley WSJ Capital Creates Change, it will show you the storytelling that we wanted to do. They had an Institute of Sustainable Investing, and we said, while we can go out and we can talk to all the companies that you're working with who are working to combat climate change, it would also be great to tell the story of how climate change isn't this future concept that is happening in 20, 30 years. It's happening now, and it's affecting lives now. And so we actually went to a country called Kiribati in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and it's an island nation. The main island is like shaped like a very thin wishbone. Most places on the island aren't wider than this room on the wishbone, and the highest point of land anywhere in Kiribati is 3 meters above sea level. So when they get a king tide, they already have water that covers the whole island. But with climate change and rising sea levels, they will be the first country on the planet to be overwhelmed by climate change. And so we went around and talked to them. It's a great video, so you should go and watch it. Another thing, to go back to the technology, Ferdy, is VR. And so when you speak to me, I want to go back and talk about this project. We haven't got time to play it, so I'm going to skip past. I went to Vice. I was there for a short amount of time. They'd asked me to go in to help set up a personal finance vertical. Vice is like the MTV of the, you know, our generation of media right now. I'd always been in B2B. They wanted me to bring my B2B experience to help them expand as their audience aged up. And so I went there with a publisher, Hannah Voltman, and we worked on trying to get that off the ground. They had some negative press and PR, which really affected the business. And I was only there for a short amount of time because basically if we're not making money, then we're at risk. And that was the first time in my career I've been laid off. So I'm going to skip past the stuff. So I've been laid off, but I've been speaking about opportunities, and I ended up at Fortune. Fortune is a really interesting brand. They're 90 years old. They've always been part of the Time Group, and they were like a best-kept secret. They've just been bought by a Thai businessman called Chachaval Jarivanan, who read it when he was in college. He thinks we've got a huge opportunity to be the voice of global business. Fortune runs incredible live events, Most Powerful Women, which it's run for 20 years. It runs the Change the World index, which is all about profit and purpose. And they have the CEO initiative, which our CEO, Alan Murray, convenes 200 of the world's leading CEOs from Fortune 500 companies to go and work out how they can work on societal problems that are facing the planet. We've got a website, we've got a magazine that's been in print for 90 years, and they're now an independent company, and it was my chance to go and kind of restart. So one of the things, first things I have to do, how long have I got left, Henry? Can you give me 3 minutes? 3 minutes? Okay. This is one of the first pieces of work I've ever done. It almost feels like I've gone full circle because we had no money and a short amount of time to produce a sales reel for our owner for a meeting. It's not really been seen outside of our walls. We used one of our editors to do the voiceover in a pinch, Maythree, who works out of London. And this is a 90-second spot that we created that we're now using as a sales reel.
For 90 years, Fortune has been driving the conversation about business. Fortune has been trusted to convene and challenge those who are shaping industry, who are changing commerce and helping societies around the world advance. Today, business is truly global. The rewards have never been greater, and neither has the risk. Technology is creating constant transformation, and once successful strategies are being challenged from all sides. Those leaders and the people who aspire to be leaders need someone to light the path forward. This is where the new Fortune will shine. A proudly independent media company that will enable the wider Fortune community to understand the most important movements and motivations within global business. To get personal with the greatest minds rethinking key companies and taking on entire industries. And to fully understand the impact of today's business stories and how they will reverberate for generations. We are a community. Join us, and together we can define what it is to make business better. Welcome to the new Fortune.
And so the opportunity that we've got, I think, at Fortune is to build out a branded content studio that's best in class. And what we've been doing is looking at our networks and pulling in the best people that we've worked with. So I hired my design director from Bloomberg, Kim Coyle, who put this deck together for me. She's amazing, and I love her, in case she's watching this online. And we also hired Megan Gilbert, who I'd worked with at Vice, who is our branded editorial, executive branded editorial, who has got this amazing storytelling ability, who has this B2B focus, but we're using it in a B2B world. And what we want to do is partner up with brands and organizations and government, NGOs, and anyone basically that wants to reach the most powerful audience in business. And so that's where we are. Thank you for listening. I didn't fit it all in.
Good job, David. Ladies and gentlemen, David Lennon. Thank you. Amazing presentation, very engaging, and that was a storytelling journey. David Lennon, ladies and gentlemen, is the Executive Creative Director Commercial at Fortune Media in New York. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, David Lennon. So while we have David on stage, it's with pleasure I'd like to call on the Chief Executive Officer, Imaginarium Creative, Ferdinand Ladi Adimefe. He will be engaging David in a fireside chat, a world contending with content. You all agree that content is king in this present day. So, Ferdinand, it's all yours.
Good afternoon. All right, guys, please, I would like you to also give a round of applause for yourselves. I mean, you've been here for the first day, second day, and this is the last hour. I think we have, how long?
You have about 45 minutes.
I'll make it shorter. Actually, I don't have that longer concentration span, so I'll do well with the little time we have. But I want this to be quite engaging. But there's a lot. We've just seen the front side of everything, the glories, the award. Now we want to get behind the backstage to get a sense of what this is. But someone asked me earlier, Freddie, which panel are you speaking on? And I said the last one. And I like to think you save the best for last, but sometimes it's not the case. Or if we say this is the icing on the cake, I don't know. That will be left for you to decide. But David, let's start out on a very light note. Are you related to John Lennon? Of the Beatles?
Yeah, so it's a funny story because my granddad was called John back in the 60s. So back in the 60s, there was 3 John Lennons in the Liverpool phone book. And somehow a gang of Tokyo schoolgirls got hold of a Liverpool phone book. And so they used to call in like the early 70s at like 4:30 in the morning. And wake my granddad up, and so even though I think he liked the music, he hated the Beatles because of that. And my uncle was also called John as well, so I'm not related. I wish I was. But now I hear it a lot. The first time I went to New York in '97 with university, I would literally open my passport when I got ID'd, and all the Irish bars would, because we were in Irish bars, would see Lennon and be like, oh my God, we've got one of the Beatles in, and all the Americans would be buying me drinks and like, the Beatles and all that, so it was quite...
Please try not to use it to toast any lady this time. I don't think they will know the Beatles. It's a different world we now live in. So I want you to talk about the jobs you've done. I mean, you've been on both sides of the equation. You've worked for an agency and you've worked for the brand. Now, what has been your experience looking at both sides of the lens?
One of the reasons when I left McCann Erickson and I wanted to go to a smaller agency was because I liked the idea of ownership and I liked the idea of long-term growth, and McCann's was like the most amazing experience for me. I don't think I could have asked for more, and yet I would see situations where if they lost a client, then the creatives that worked with that client, if it was a key client of theirs, might not have that long of a runway to find more clients and win new business before the economics of an ad agency says, well, they need to go. And so that's why I was interested in working in a smaller agency. And again, I hadn't created any custom content anywhere else, so Bloomberg pulled me in to do in-house marketing. I hadn't done it before, and again, because of Dave Bilcliffe and him saying, like, just do everything and then find out what you're good at later. I thought, well, I'll try it for a couple of months, see how it goes, and if I don't like it, I can always leave. But there was always an opportunity at Bloomberg to do something different, and that was also what I liked with working with a big company like Bloomberg, was that even though it was one company, 1 week you could be working on a huge building wrap outside the building, the next week you could be working on like £50 per invitations for like the Tate Modern, where we were sponsoring an event. There was constantly just a churn of like new exciting things to work on, and when I looked at agencies, I struggled to think if I'd be excited if I won a big piece of business and I was on that business for many years, how it would be to just work for one brand. And so I always liked the selection and opportunity to constantly challenge myself in different places. So as Bloomberg took off, and certainly like the later years in London and all of the time in New York, there was just constantly new things to learn and new things to challenge me. And if I'm challenged, then I get excited, and if I don't feel challenged, I get bored very quickly. So I'm like all or nothing, So, yeah, but, again, I do miss the intimacy is probably the word, intimacy with the brand that you can build in an agency, where if you know the clients like the back of your hand and you work with them for many years, you can start to come up with creative ideas that are way outside their brief and what anyone wants to do, but suddenly, everyone can get on board, and they trust you, they have loyalty to you, they have faith in what you're going to do. And I think I brought that back with Jim and other people in our team, certainly at Bloomberg, where from 2007 onwards, he was doing it in London, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific. He kind of covered those territories. When I left him in London, and I was concentrated in the Americas. But we started to build multi-year partnerships with clients, and that was key. And I think that's key for any content studio, is that so many people are constantly just thinking about quarterly results and we need to bring the money in now. But these long-term clients that will change your career are ones that take time to build, you know, and you've got to over-deliver value, and you've really got to build those relationships so that they start to trust you, you know.
You know, interestingly, if we have to reel through your CV, you've worked for many money brands, and it's all about business for them and money, from Fortune to Wall Street. They're all heavily into business. Now, what has been your experience being a creative and working with non-creative bosses? Has there been times when you experienced tension, where you were thinking of going in a direction, and so how that experience would play out, I would like to know. Secondly, and I think it's very tied to this, the revenue side of the conversation. Now, here you have people who run agencies, and they will tell you, how is this going to impact on the bottom line, right? So even if you're managing PR, you're driving marketing communications, the conversation has not been reduced to money talk. So what has been your experience on both counts?
I'm going to split it into two. So internally, for the companies that I've worked for, I've been lucky to work for people who believe in me. That has to be built up over time. But I think what I've always managed to do is acknowledge that as a creative, you can't live in a bubble. You can't not be involved in business and revenue. And especially in branded content, that is everything. That is the first concern. Can we bring money in? And so once you let people know that, and they don't just think you're creative, because you can get dismissed quite easily as someone who just wants to go off and he wants to make a beautiful video and spend lots of money and blah, blah, blah. So you need to be able to sell internally all of the different stakeholders, not just the sales team, but, you know, their bosses, the C-suite within the company, that the investments that you're asking for are going to pay off in the short, mid, and long term. And so one thing that we did at Bloomberg, and we later did at the Wall Street Journal, was as we were winning business, we'd buy a single piece of equipment. It might be a tripod, it might be a camera lens, but we were constantly looking at ways to cut costs over time, so that the next time that we get the same amount of money, we can go and buy another lens, or we can go and buy a new camera, or whatever it was going to be. And it was always about building growth, because the more equipment and talent that we could bring in, the less we would spend going out. Externally with clients, it's a lot to unpack with how we can prove that we're driving revenue. It's something that very recently everyone's laser focused on.
So it's more tied to lead generation?
Well, yeah. So there's a couple of things and a couple of different ways that we've done it, and I think it depends on the client and their industry and where they're at and what the pressures are facing them, but we like to get that out of them in the brief. We don't want to just know about what they want to create, but we also want to know why and how and what it's going to do for them, and what their bosses are going to think of if we make a campaign and if we deliver and if we don't. And so if we understand the pressures that are facing them, then we can help them reach their goals. Now, a lot of it right now is lead generation. So can we create digitally a way for people to be taken over, where they can maybe share some details or sign up for more information with the client? And that's traditional lead generation. But there's also an implied value to revenue generation that I think we provide, which is obviously there's brand awareness. I'm a huge believer, and this is the reason why not get that music created so it's an original score that you buy the rights out for, that you can give to the client, so that when they've got that video, they don't, at the end of the year, have to pay you more licensing fees, because that's short-term thinking from a business. If you want to use that video after the end of the year, pay me 5, 10, 20k, whatever. You're only going to get 5 or 10 or 20k. But if you give a client something that is supremely useful for them, not just during the campaign but afterwards, then they want to constantly come back and work with you. So I've lost count of the amount of times that clients have said, oh, like, gee, we created these videos. The sales team were pulling them off YouTube, taking them out to prospects, and they were showcasing all the case studies and saying, this is what our clients think of us. And so they were great GE Capital was. The companies that were working with GE Capital were doing these them to explain what different parts of the business did. And we were talking, you know, before, if we walk into a video and we're into a meeting to pitch a campaign to a client, you know, there's been times when we've walked in and above their reception on a video screen is work that we've created for them, you know. Or we get on a Delta Airlines plane who we worked with for 8 years at Bloomberg and then took them over to Wall Street Journal and worked with them there. We'd have our videos, the 2-minute videos that we'd create for like online and sometimes TV. They'd be playing on the seatback screens. Like you could go in and watch them.
So there's a sense of longevity in the content?
Absolutely.
So aside the longevity, and if we can't exactly make a case about the revenue, what other factors do you think contribute or will be responsible for saying a commercial campaign has been successful in your own count?
Sometimes it can happen before the campaign's even launched, you know. A lot of time when you're working with companies, there's a lot of pressure to deliver. And even with some huge multinational companies, they don't have in-house content teams who are set up in the way that we can be with internal resources and external vendors that we use to pull in like best-in-class talent at the drop of a hat. And if you need me to be in Hong Kong tomorrow and you have the money, I'll get on a plane from Kigali and I'll find a way to get there. Like, that was our attitude. We can get the best talent and pull them with us. And so we could produce, with some companies, a lot higher quality content than they could in-house. So before a campaign's even launched, you'd have the CEO turn around to the CMO and saying, this is the best like video that we've ever had made, or we, you know, digitally they've expressed what we do and we should use this on our own website. And, you know, internally there's a huge buzz about this campaign that's going to launch. And then, you know, it's the team that, you know, we work with, the clients who come back and say that salespeople or employees at the company or, you know, even their friends, their family, people at the golf club, wherever, have commented, oh, I've seen that thing that you've done on Bloomberg or on Wall Street Journal or Vice or whatever, you know. There's the kind of word of mouth. And then obviously with the rise of social media, if people start to share your work, I mean, I don't know how many people share work in this room. I don't share a lot, but when I see a great piece of content, I'll share it. And, you know, what we're producing at the end of the day is still advertising. It's not true content, editorial content, it's branded content. So if we can get people to watch something, engage with it, and then take action in some way, even if it's just talking about it, then we see that it's success, and so do clients. And we've worked with enough over a long period of time on multi-year campaigns where, you know, the record speaks for itself. And I think it takes time to build that. But once you know a client and once they know you and once they know that you're constantly looking at long-term goals where everyone can win together, you can build some really interesting partnerships, you know.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know some of us run agencies or head departments where we have to deal with them. I don't know how many awards you have to your credits. Maybe 10. If you have up to 20 awards from your organization, can I see by a show of hand if you have up to 20 awards? Okay. Can see a few hands. Do we step it up to 50 awards from your? Okay. 100. Well, now this is why we need to listen to our guest here. He has to his credit over 300 awards from his creative works. I think we should clap to that. So Well, and then again, on one level, it's not just about the awards that you receive, it's the credibility of the institutions giving those awards. When you have all those high-profile clients and you have to go through intense competition, it's actually worth mentioning. But if you have over 300 awards, and I want you to walk us through your creative process. I mean, these actually across diverse industries, and yet you're sustaining something. Can you walk us through your creative process on how you get to have this masterpiece at a work or branded content that gets to just sort of cross over and make the mark for clients? How do you sustain that?
Well, firstly, and I'm going to go back to what I said at the start of the talk I give, while it's me that has 300 awards, it's really a creative team that I've worked with and then a larger organisation behind that. And so there's many, many people that I've worked with that have all contributed, and we win them as a team, whatever client that's for. I also say as well that, and again, I don't know if I said this in Korea, but I'll say it here, we used to use these awards as weapons, because if you can go and win an award for a client, for a piece of work that they've done, you've got a statuette or you've got a piece of glass or however they create the award, you buy it and you put that on their desk. And every time that everyone goes in to speak to them or their boss, that award's there, and it's a constant reminder that that time that you worked with the team over there, you've done something good creatively that was good enough to win an award, or it was effective, or it hit business goals, whatever the award's for. And so it's really important that awards can be used in the right way, especially when you're trying to grow a business. And so certainly for people in agencies and the creative departments within them, there's a prove the ROI on awards entries and then going off and spending however much on every single award that you win. But there is a huge ROI, because we're talking maybe a couple of $1,000s to enter all your work, and if you're lucky enough to win, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 to buy enough statues to give to your clients. But that's going to drive deals in the tens and hundreds and even maybe $1 million ranges long term. So it's just a nice signpost of a job well done. And it doesn't matter what level of award it is, it's just a signifier that everyone come together, the client, the media agency, the ad agency. We work with ad agencies a lot. Like, you guys own the relationship with the brands, and we have an absolute open door policy when we work with ad agencies for them to be as involved as they want. They can be on set with us, they can be sat and edit. We use them for feedback, we use them for research. It's really important to kind of build these relationships, because you never know when it's going to pay off, but it's just a win-win for everyone, And then what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
So how was the process for you to work through this? Yeah.
So it's a blessing and a curse in a way, but in all the companies that I've worked for, there's always been like this tsunami level wave of work that's constantly coming in the door. There's briefs, there's RFPs, there's salespeople who've got a contact at a company that might be interested in doing a thing. Can we do a proactive pitch? And you're constantly in this chair. And I think one of the things that I say to everyone that I work with is that you've got to be comfortable in being out of your comfort zone, and you've got to be comfortable in the fact that there's always going to be too much work to do, not enough time to do it. And I'd say that you can learn to prioritize and make sure that everything works, but up until the day of the deadline, up until that minute of the deadline, it can be chaotic, and that's okay. I don't think that great creativity comes from like a completely ordered system. I think there's got to be, at least for me, certain levels of chaos. I was up at 1 with jet lag this morning, still working out which pieces of work I wanted to show and which pieces I was going to cut. I have my design director who's on vacation at the beach, who hates me. And I'm like, can we just change this one slide and can we just... And I knew what this speech was going to be before I boarded the plane. And I had notes written out, but I was constantly trying to change. And, you know, I was fascinated yesterday with some of the conversations that I heard on the stage, but also that I had with people. And I tried to put in as many of the challenges as I'd heard into that talk. And I think you've got to approach creativity that way. You know, the most you ever know about a client is the moment up to that moment when the presentation deck or the idea goes in front of them. You don't know everything at the start of the brief. You have to do your research. You have to have people around you that understand what the client knows. You'll get some feedback maybe along the way. You know, and there might be multiple stages to the brief. So you're constantly learning as you go. And as creatives, as a creative, I wish someone had told me this a lot earlier in my career, because I would have stopped a lot of people hating me. But what you really need to do is build relationships with everyone outside of the creative process, because they do not understand why you want to change something at the last minute. The project managers have a mind and a mindset that gets the project done, that keeps everything moving smoothly. And creativity, again, in my own mind, and this is definitely directed at myself, is chaotic and doesn't work with a process. And so you need relationships with people where you can be honest and you can say, you know, it's okay to hate me at times, but so long as I understand and know that you are doing the best you can do at your job as a project manager or as a salesperson, and I need you to know and understand that I'm doing my best as a creative to give you the best work that goes out the door. And so there's going to be friction along the way, but you know, I always say to people, if we can walk into a meeting room, close the door, shout at each other, scream, so long as we can then nod at each other and we can walk out of that door as colleagues, as mates, as we say, then everything's good, because it will enable you to push each other to the absolute limit, but it won't break them personal bonds and relationships that I think you really need to be successful. All of that work that you saw on the screen, all of it only happened not because of the creatives, but because of the salespeople, because of project managers, because of AdOps people.
It's pretty much a teamwork.
The whole organization makes that happen.
All right. We'd like to bring the question to you guys. So if you have questions, we'll take that up. But while you're thinking through your question, just one more question. Technology is, which is my last question, and then we'll come over to you. Technology is actually thought to be like a threat or an opportunity. In the wake of the apps coming, digital phones are getting smarter and more sophisticated. I could use my phone and shoot a piece of art. And so the democratization of technology and all of that is sort of like, you know, the whole space is evolving. What is the future for an agency, or what's the future of visual storytelling in the wake of technology? Can technology come to the point that it will replace humans?
No, I don't think it can. I think that there's an art, a level of art to what we do, and creativity, that no matter how many times you feed this into a computer and it randomizes and, you know, has machine learning, I think creativity and art are places where the human experience, as someone mentioned before, is brought to the fore. And I think that technology doesn't need to be a thing that we're scared of, but technology should be a tool to get across the human story. It should be a tool to play into the human experience. And there's an example I didn't get time to show, which is Morgan Stanley. We've done this campaign, Capital Creates Change. Morgan Stanley come to us, their C-suite had been to some tech show, maybe CES or somewhere. They put on VR headsets and they loved it. They were like, this is the future. Morgan Stanley was seen as this kind of like very institutional organization. They weren't as cool as maybe an Apple or a Microsoft, and a lot of tech companies were essentially being a brain drain on people like Morgan Stanley, because they were the cool places to go and work. And so Morgan Stanley were like, listen, we want to go out and we want to create really cool tech-first expressions of what we do. And so they wanted to do a VR campaign all about the Institute of Sustainable Investing. And we said, yes, we can do it. We'd never done VR before. We ended up shooting stereoscopic 360, so it's not true VR, but if you put a headset on, everywhere you look, you can see. And we went to Kiribati and we shot this video, and the one thing that was missing from there was human emotion. And we didn't know that until we started it, but on the side, we'd shot these videos with Richard Butterworth, our filmmaker, who's amazing, and he'd captured the people of Kiribati and really brought you in a dignified way to the problems that they faced. And that wasn't coming across in the VR headset. And so what was sold as a kind of VR campaign essentially became a digital immersive hub with hero video, and the VR, the 360 video that we created became a complement to that. So I think you don't need to rush into the latest technology. You need to focus on stories. You need to focus on the idea, and then you need to work out what media platforms are best to tell it. Don't be ignorant, but don't be led either. Work out what your story is, and then work out how to tell it and what that platform is. And you might be surprised, because you might come up with a concept and think the best way to tell this is video. And it's not. It's long form articles, or it's an event, or whatever it is. So I try now, even though I still do it myself, to not think about the platform or the technology. Think about the story and then apply it the best way.
All right, think about the story, and the technology can amplify that for us. Question, contributions, or comments?
All right, Freddie, we got a first question here.
All right, thank you so much. This is a very enlightening presentation. I'm seeing all that you do, like in my head, I'm trying to understand, what do you really do, right? Because it looks to me like it's a curation of several experiences, like experience design, if you ask me. So beyond the functional definition which you would give us, which is content, I'd like you in a phrase or a sentence just tell us what business you're into. What would you say, what business would you say that you're into? You know?
Yeah. So right now it's called branded content. And it's essentially storytelling for brands through the lens of the media company that you work for. And so I think what's happened over certainly the past 6 or 7 years, heavily in America, in Europe and in Asia, is that brands have realized that you can have ad campaigns for awareness and to drive sales, but you can complement that with branded content, where your brand ads can sit right alongside branded content on these media platforms, where you can tell deeper stories, where it's more of an editorial feel, and where you can really bring to life the people, the personalities, the challenges, the emotions, the successes, the failures, in a way that sometimes is difficult to do in advertising, because it's still coming from a brand directly. And so this fact that we're one step away means that, and I've always been a big believer in this from day one, that we can work side by side with agencies, and we can complement their work, and we can complement the client's vision and their messaging. And in the best work that we've done, it's where all the parties have been sat at the table together, strategizing from the brief all the way through to feedback and final execution of the work. How our creative team and our way of thinking can just give a slightly different perspective from the ad campaign and the long-term relationships that you foster with your clients. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's quite an in-depth description of what you do. Okay, so we've got one question here.
Thank you, David. I think the presentation was particularly fascinating for me. My name is Cletus, by the way. Work for Coca-Cola as the strategy marketing manager for Sparkling in West Africa. I wanted to, and I come from Nigeria. I have two questions for you. One, I wanted to understand a bit more your assessment of branded content out of Africa and where you see the strengths and opportunities, what we can probably do differently in order to step change some of the outputs we see every now and then. The second question I have for you stems from one of the comments you made in the course of your presentation. You were talking about how you work sometimes with multiple outfits and agencies. And I wanted to understand again, what your internal processes looks like in terms of multiple agency management. How were you able to collaborate and make sure that the multiple agencies continue to enable, the creation of these brilliant ideas, they come through to clients and it doesn't become a kind of inhibitor, where people are squabbling about, which agency is actually bringing out the idea and all that. So I just wanted to understand a bit more. It's quite a mouthful. I hope you get both questions. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one, and I kind of touched on this at the start. My experience has been working in Manchester, London, and New York, and there's no way that I'm going to come on this stage and talk to people who cover 54 different countries how they should do branded content. I think the way to get better at what you do is to look around and to see what other people are doing, whether that's in your country, it's in your continent, and it's in other continents themselves. There's a site called Brandtail, which kind of collates some of the best branded content from around the world. And while I'm not one of those people who religiously goes through everyone else's work, I kind of open myself up to what's happening around the world. And I think this documentary style of storytelling, whether it's in video, but you can also have it in a written word, the long-form editorial, in-depth reporting. This documentary style, real-life telling of stories of real people is something that goes back all the way through human history. And I think rather than trying to present a brand as something that it's not, I think great branded content presents the brand as it is and educates you and makes you more informed, makes you laugh, makes you cry, smarter, but it gives you a reaction. And I think, again, it's difficult for me to answer the question because there's so many different countries in Africa that I've seen the best work come out of here. I've seen some amazing work from some South African publications, but it's something that you've got to define yourself. And I think the benefit of being in a position where you can help generate revenue is that you can learn as you go. And so I think that's the key thing that I'd impart is that we didn't know what we were doing when we were doing it. Even the best work that we did, we were still kind of looking at each other and going, I think it's great. Is it great? I don't know. We didn't know, and it's only with hindsight that we can kind of look back and go, well, that was a really important piece of work, or learning this then enabled us to do that. So the past kind of 2 days I've spent thinking about my career and where we've been and the people I've worked with. You know, it's just funny that every single stage we didn't know what we were doing. And so you think that, you know, you might not be able to produce like a Cokainomics right now is okay, because before Cokainomics we didn't know how to produce it. We just went out and made it, you know. And I think you've got to experiment and work out what it is that you want to say and how you want to come at it. So that's a long-winded answer, but that's the first half of the question. And then the second half of the question is, how do you keep everyone together? And I think you've got to be really genuine. When we sit down with people, we're very blatant about, when we're with the clients and agencies, that, listen, we're working on this because the way that we've always worked, and I think branded content works best, is if we're a value add. So if a client buys $1 million worth of advertising, then our production budget will come out of that. They won't spend a penny more, but they'll get $1 million worth of advertising straight up. And so we essentially work for free, and we're not taking any money away from an ad agency or creative agency they work with. And so it takes the tension away, because it's not like two competing creative agencies. We are not an ad agency. Our teams have never been that. What we are is an in-house creative team that can be a value add. And so because we're not taking money from the creatives that we work with alongside, it reduces a lot of the tension. And then I think you've just got to be really welcoming to people, and you've got to understand that while we might have worked on something for a couple of days or a couple of weeks to pitch and win the business, these people are working with clients for months and years, and it's not easy. I've worked in an ad agency. I know how hard it is. You work long hours. The clients are super demanding, and, you know, after 4 years of hard work, when someone like me walks in the door, you're just scared that I'm going to mess things up, or my team's going to mess things up. And what we need to do is make sure that we have examples of work that we can put in front of you to showcase that we know what we're doing. But we also need to respect you as people, and we need to invite you in throughout the process. That might put more time and cost on our end. It might mean that we do more feedback rounds. It might mean that we overspend on editing that we didn't expect. But what it will mean is at the end of the project, both me, you, and the client, and all the other key stakeholders will be happy. And we've tried it other ways and it doesn't work. Everyone around the table needs to be happy, and I think that's a key secret to the success of a branded content team working with outside companies.
All right, thanks for that. I think one last question.
Yes, we have a final question and we'll wrap up the session.
Hello, Zubaida Jaffa here. I would like to know where one would be able to look at the story of Medellin. Can one watch it on, for example, the town hall meeting and all that happened? Can one look at that? Because I'm very interested in the role of arts and media in transforming violent situations.
Yeah, so I ran out of time because I talked too much, basically. I had a stopwatch on my phone and I was going to put it on, and then I don't speak on stages. I got a little bit stressed. I forgot to do it. So that video is on cokainomics.com. It's further down on the bottom of the page. So if you can either remember how to spell Cokainomics, which is cocaine and then nomics.com, or if you just type in WSJ, Netflix, Narcos, it'll probably pull it up as well. But all those videos are on there. The Vimeo player's on the site. And it's funny that we actually used this piece that we did, which was for a fictional, that to B2B clients, and it was an extremely positive story. There's 6,000 people that died in Medellin in 1991 in one city. It was the murder capital of the world in 1991, and they reduced the murder rate by 95%, you know, and they've changed the livelihood of everyone within Medellin, so that it's really come up. It's one of the, I think WSJ awarded it like one of the most innovative cities in the world. So there's great stories to be told, and I think branded content, especially with its editorial lean, is a great way to bring that stuff to life. And so I don't normally do this, but for all the NGOs and government people and economic people and travel boards who are in the room, like, and everyone else as well, like, hit me up on LinkedIn and we can have conversations, because even if you don't want to work with Fortune or it's not right, I can just give you a ton of advice, because I think branded content is a great platform to tell that story and to enable you to have an editorial feel to what you have, but also have certain messaging points and people and spokespeople that you want to put into that content too. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Dave. Just a quick wrap up. Once again, takeaways. This particular session, what I keep in mind is whether you're in PR or you're marketing, whatever we do, we're in the business of storytelling. And the technology that is coming in, they're coming to amplify, to enhance our ability to tell those stories even better. And the stories are actually currency of human existence. So we would always focus on telling better stories, deeper stories, and making those connections. David Lennon, once again, not related to John Lennon, but it's great to have you in Africa. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Freddie. Thank you, David Lennon. Very insightful conversation. May we have Perez? Perez, could you please join our gentlemen on the stage for photos?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, you may.
Sorry, I haven't stopped talking. Any questions that anyone's got, get me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to get me. And after the event, you know, if you've got questions about branded content, I don't care that we might not be, you know, you might not be clients of ours. Just reach out and ask, because we really want to help everyone fund quality, honest journalism. And again, branded content is going to be a huge building block for you to build out your organization. So LinkedIn me, please. Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. That is coming FOC. Free consultancy. It's interesting that branded content is beginning to take a hold on the way we communicate. And I remember many years ago when I took on my second master's degree, and my area of specialization happened to be branded content. It looked and felt novel at that time. It was a huge struggle. But of course, down the line, this is 2019, and here we are. It is going to be the king of the future of content. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been very insightful having a conversation with this gentleman, and of course, getting more integration in and around the world contending with content. And I'm sure diligently crafting our messages, and of course, how we want to be deliberate with communicating. It's been insightful, exciting, empowering, educated, and of course, exhilarating. 3 days of conversations. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I must say, you have been an awesome, amazing delegate. A round of applause for yourselves, please. GAFCOM was set for a purpose, and we hope that the purpose and intent for which this platform has been created will go a long way, especially as we begin to see the future and possibilities in what we do. Innovation will continue to pave way for growing business in Africa, and innovation with the way we craft our messages and content will help in changing the narrative about the new Africa we all hope and dream of. I know there has been a clamor and interest from many delegates requesting for working groups, asking what happens after now. So we are in the third day of GAFCOM. We all return to our respective countries and, you know, work. Is there a future? What happens? So we would like at this point to get your own participation, more importantly, your own input. in and around the learnings and the experience of bringing everyone together via this platform. It's going to be as interactive as possible. And remember, the watchword, if anything else we must take away from here, is truth. So it will be nice. And this is not asking for your feedback. Of course, our team members will be reaching out to you individually for your honest feedback in and around what we can do better. But this specifically is about the learnings, the key learning points that we all collectively and individually can go away with after today. So rather than coming out with a communique, which really this is not our style, we would rather ask you to bring your points on board and everyone can go away with a shared learning outcome. I would have my colleague Eze go around with microphones, and this is the time we need to up the energy some more and have your own take. Let's start with learnings. 3 days of back-to-back sessions, conversations, looking at a myriad of topics and presentations. What will be your key learnings? First person to go. I mean, I can actually start, and I'll tell you one of the key learnings for me is, one, I'm excited to know that there are this many practitioners on the continent. It means that collaboration is very possible. And the moment we start collaborating, not seeing ourselves necessarily as competitors or competition, then we can shape the narrative that we want. I am happy that I've met a number of you, so meaning if I've got a brief, I don't necessarily have to travel over there. But let's take your learnings.
Hi, Henry. I think for me, this has been a key platform for us to come together as communicators. And like I said in our panel yesterday, we need to applaud Perez for coming up with a vision. It's upon us to just make it better and take it further. So the fact that we are actually operating communicators who want to see Africa positioned in a different light, for me it's very encouraging. And coming from different disciplines, whether it's from a marketing perspective or from a PR perspective, we need to collaborate better, we need to work closer together, and we really need to start having a voice through our organizations, through the government portfolios that we are entrusted with. So let's start having the belief in ourselves. Let's start having the belief in making sure that communication become the center stage of decision making. So thank you so much, Perez, for just making sure that we engage with each other, we meet each other, and we can be able to speak for Africa collectively.
Well, hi. So just to re-echo...
May we have your name?
Yes, my name is Yao from Ghana, Yao Kuonu. And I'd like to re-echo our appreciation to the NEV Africa for putting this together. Speak for Africa has come to stay. And I think that the key learning for me is that no matter what we do, we should be mindful that we need to change the narrative for Africa. We need to create our own narrative. And the game changer is truth, because that kind of underpinned all of the discussions that we had here. I've had a great time. I'm glad I came. And once again, congratulations to Perez and the team. I'm looking forward to coming to the next edition. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jumoke Ogunaiki. I'm from Nigeria. As a follow-up to what Yao has said, when I first got here, I told Perez that this is what we need in Africa now to change the narrative. And in as much as we practitioners are doing this, I'll also want to encourage Perez in the next edition to include the academia, because that is where the future are being bred. So as to have them toward the path that we have created now. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Perumal. I'd just like to thank Perez for validating that I'm actually sane and normal, and that there's a whole ecosystem of Pan-Africanists that share a vision. And I just think this platform is so vital to connect and to network. But going forward, you don't have to be alone. I think in each part of the continent, in each country, there are subject matter experts, communication experts, PR, branding specialists, and the new way to move forward is through collective, integrated approaches. And it's better to have 10% of something than 100% of nothing. So I'm excited that I took the risk and I bought a plane ticket and I came to connect to meet the MD of Magna Carta all the way from Johannesburg. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, my name is Yetunde Adeshino. I'm from Nigeria. I work in the marketing communications field. Essentially, I've been one who is very passionate about Africa, and I've always said that it's Africans that will fix Africa. So this conference for me is a reiteration of what I've always believed, and for me, it's also a call to action. It's time for us to walk the talk and not just let things remain here. Thank you.
All right, Freddie from Nigeria. What I think is, if we're living here, if it's possible that in a year or two from now, we can have something like a fellowship or a fellow or a community tied to this that can be collective and have representative across different countries. So when the next conference comes, we mobilize people that are interested. But we cannot grow this. If you look at the medical field, they do have standardization of some sort. They have platforms where they get to share, certify, and preserve and protect their industry. If we have a chance to protect and preserve this industry, or even build it, or make much of it, it will require that this platform can lend itself to building that connection across Africa. So those are my thoughts, and I hope we go forward with that.
Thank you very much. My name is Toyin Abiodun. I work here with government as a strategic advisor to the Minister of Trade and Industry. I'm culturally Nigerian. I was raised in England. The comment that I have to make here actually is really about impact. Whilst this isn't necessarily my background, but a lot of work that we do, whether it be industrializing or trade and, expanding our industries across Africa, we rely on, your various professional expertise. So when we look at impact, speaking for Africa, there's so many aspects or ways in which we could do that. We could look at ways in lifting as we climb. Maybe have some sort of program that basically creates capacity development, or that foundation that creates the next generation for what it is that you're doing. Who would do what you're doing when you're not there? And also from a business standpoint, which is more my background, and trade, there's so many ways in which, whilst we tell this story, we shine positive lights on Africa. I just spoke to John over there, and a lot of times we see stories across Africa. At the moment, it isn't the case, but usually it's not necessarily positive. So as we shine the light and speak for Africa, let's also think about impactful stories that shine positive light on Africa in whatever field that we work. And so I'd also like to conclude by thanking Perez for this great avenue of pulling practitioners and experts together. It's fantastic. And again, speaking for the ministry that I work for, we look forward to working with you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toyin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chidi Okereke from Nigeria. I work in digital communications. First of all, fantastic event, awesome event. I had a fantastic time learning from some of the biggest players in the media and comms industry in Africa and across the world. I'd like to see For subsequent editions, I'd like to see more sessions on digital communications, digital marketing, digital advertising and all that, because the world is, like they say, a global village now. News travels very fast, and social media is like the biggest driver of news these days. So I'd like to see more sessions on how we can harness the powers of social media. Following up with what Ferdinand said, I'd also like that we all sort of have like a community of people in this whole place. I don't know if we could create, this is me just thinking out of the box. I don't know if we could create, say, a Telegram group and just keep in touch one way or the other and support each other as much as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chidi. We'll probably take the last comment and or the last input and move on quickly.
Thank you for the opportunity. Perez, we won't thank you enough for bringing us all together. I'm Agi Patricia Turomwe from 8020 Marketing Uganda. I have learned so much, and I'm very appreciative of the NAV, and please take all our appreciation. I would love to come back next year, but I would love to have more engagement from the audience opposed to the panelists. Like, let's have just a few minutes for the panelists, and then we listen to all the different challenges from different countries, because like we said, we're 54 countries. Then we can get more lessons from the different trends, ROI, AR, just everything, data, metrics. What do we read? What reports do we get? Information that drive our decisions. And yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited to meet all the Nigerians.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, I'm told that there was one lady who had indicated her hand. Okay, she's right beside you. Okay, that will be our last input.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hajara Tunde Osho from Nigeria. I work with the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. That's the agency that coordinates all activities on human trafficking in Nigeria. First of all, thank you, Perez. Thank you, the Nerve Africa. But particularly, I would like to say thank you to Lekon Lawal, because for so long, most of the times, I handle media relations and coverage of human trafficking issues. You see, most times, all we see are statistics. There are no human interest stories. They don't follow up, and I feel it's not making an impact. And then I also learned the difference between communication and engagement, and I believe that is going to make a whole difference. Even when I'm, interfacing with those I'm working with, now we can say, okay, this is what I want, and this is what is going to change the life of people. Let's engage with them. Let's even pick up someone, follow the person's path. And really, we need to tell our own stories. Speaking for Africa when it comes to migration issues, it's a whole big deal. Out there, they see us as people who just come around and bug them at their borders. So issues of border management, please, my colleagues in various fields, look into this. Tell the stories of survivors. We call them survivors, not victims. Tell the stories of these survivors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hajara. And on that note, we say thank you all for your meaningful and valuable contributions and, of course, the learnings and experience while engaging with us at GAFCOM 2019. We would like to say a big thank you to Francis Uje from Kenya. Francis, could you stand? Thank you, Francis. Thank you very much. So Francis actually sent us a note, and which we are grateful for. So we really appreciate your input. Okay, thank you. So what we also have decided to do, ladies and gentlemen, is for everyone who may be interested in being a part of a working group that will continue activities beyond the platform today and for the coming months and all through the series of Speak for Africa. We would kindly ask you to indicate your interest at the end of at the formal end of the conference. You indicate your interest of joining the working group at that desk, which is on your way out of the conventions, out of the hall. So as you make your way out of the hall, if you're interested in continuing and engaging as a part of the working group, which will be working on the sideline outside of this conference, please indicate your interest at that desk, which you will spot as you make your way out of this auditorium. We will take your details, and of course, there will be further information on how the group will work going forward. And of course, the group or groups will not be limited to regions, but it would have different mechanisms. We will explain all of those as we go along. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you once again for really participating all through. Of course, the NEV Africa's event, which is the Global Africa Forum on Communications, the maiden edition here in Kigali, had covered a myriad of issues and subjects, which would include trade reputation, global media perspective on how important it is for us to begin to put Africa in the most favorable perspective, especially with our partners in the West. We also looked at advertising and marketing in Africa, looking at nuances, cultural interpretations, and contextualizing our stories and messages. And particularly we looked at power play, truth, and politics. I mean, there are a number of topics and subjects that were conference for the past 3 days this time around, but we promised that we will continue the engagement offline as well. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, it is with pleasure I would like us to please give a resounding round of applause for the convener, founder, and organizer of Global Africa Forum on Communications, who also is the Chief Executive Officer, Aiden and Newton, and publisher, the NEV Africa. With a resounding round of applause, if possible, a standing ovation, please welcome Perez. Take it down. Keep clapping. Thank you. You're a very cooperative audience.
I don't think I deserve this spotlight alone. So I'm going to ask every member of the team that has worked with me to ensure that this happens successfully to come up stage. Emilia, Deji, everyone, Keme, Eze. It's been 14 months of hard work for what we would call a ragtag team. And I remember several times in the office, we would take movies like 300 and watch just to encourage ourselves, to motivate ourselves and see what a ragtag army could do. Everything you see here today is because this team sacrificed their time, sacrificed their lives. Half of us came here sick because 2 weeks to this event, nobody went home. We were all sleeping at the office, eating, not having our bath, ensuring that this happens. So I do not think that I deserve the spotlight alone. Please put your hands together for them. It's been a very difficult task for me coming up stage. I've done several conferences and I've never been on stage for any, and this is actually my first being up stage. And that's because the team has insisted that if I do not do this, they'll stop work. I think some of us are wired differently. Some of us are meant to be behind the scene, behind the stage, doing the work, executing and ensuring that people like the professionals that we've had on all of the panels, our speakers, take the spotlight and offer to everyone what they know how to do best. Ours is to ensure that we create the platform and get you to be here. I listened to most of the comments and the questions and everything everyone has said, and I want to say that our team for the next edition of GAFCOM is already larger than this. It will not fill the stage, and I'll explain what I mean. Everyone here in this hall today becomes a part of the planning team for the next edition. What that means is that we will be building this as a community. We are taking feedbacks, listening to everyone, getting all of the ideas. We've learned a lot, mistakes made, learnings and everything, and we believe that we will do better, and we'll do better not for ourselves, but for the continent. This isn't about anybody. This isn't about any company. Isn't about any individual. It's about the continent. Humbled, excited, elated, and other relevant synonyms cannot express the state of mind, my state of mind at the moment. And on behalf of the planning team, sponsors, and strategic partners, I am pleased to welcome you all to Kigali. I hope you've enjoyed your stay, and I do wish that wherever we are going next, you will go with us. This is the premier edition of the Global Africa Forum on Communications, otherwise known as Speak for Africa. The vision to put together an event of this scale and standard was inspired by a keen interest to convene the leading experts, professionals, and government officials on the continent and beyond to a very important tool, and beyond on a very important tool for continued human existence, which is communications. One may be curious to ask, what compelled a young expert with just about a decade of experience in media and communications to take on such a Herculean task of hosting conversations about communications for the continent? I ask, what should compel me not to? Africa has for many decades suffered from a myriad of challenges, many of which are outcomes of gaps in communication. This maiden edition of Speak for Africa focuses on putting action to the various clarion calls to shape our common and collective narratives as a continent. Each session, sub-themes, and speakers were carefully selected, curated, and invited to ensure we have a well-rounded and holistic conversation. From the impressive lineup, it is obvious that our convening over the 3 days we've been here, thought-provoking and inspiring messages is something we can take home with and build on in our respective industries and wherever we find ourselves, our respective countries. This call is for us to work together, which is one of the reasons we've said everyone here will be a part of the planning team for the next edition. To do this, we must first move beyond the high level of mistrust that exists between regions and nations on the continent. We cannot move forward this way. Security and an aggressive effort to ensure widespread sustainable development through collaboration and access will be next. I am certain a number of you are expecting me to mention the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. I will not dwell on that. However, I must add that the sooner we move from legal documents to actual groundwork, the sooner we can guarantee our cliched bright future as a continent. While that is a lot of policy work to be done, I believe also that the only way you can integrate Africa properly is by having those in comms, the communications professionals, to be at the forefront. Yesterday, during the conversation with the minister, a lot of people asked about how do we get those who actually face the brunt of public relations crisis, those who manage communications, to be at the table where these decisions are made. I believe that GAFCOM will play a critical role in ensuring that the vision of the AFTA for the continent will be a reality. In the next few months, we will be announcing where we are going next for the next edition, what country, and what will be happening between now and then. We won't just stop, sit down, go back to our houses, fold our hands. We will ensure that we have activities lined up, learnings, workshops, masterclasses, tours, policy conversations across different countries. And as we reach out to you that we are coming to your country or we are coming to your city, we ask that you open your arms, open your houses. If we do not have money for hotels, please let us in and we will stay with you and ensure that our stay will be a successful one. Thank you, everyone. We want to use this opportunity to thank our sponsors, our partners, Coca-Cola, Old Mutual, Leo Bonnet, everyone that has made this a success. We couldn't have done this without you, and we thank you for your vision. I think that it's not just us having a vision here, it's also about you seeing the possibility of where we are headed with this and providing the strong support and backbone to ensure that this happens. Thank you very much, and as you leave for your respective countries, we ask that you have GAFCOM at the back of your mind. When you go to your offices, on your doors, you could print a little sticker and have GAFCOM is a priority on the door. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, while they are still on stage, we should take a photograph on stage, actually. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. One more time, a round of applause for the team, the NEV Africa team, and of course, the entire team that have made GAFCON a huge success. Okay, while that is going on, just so you know that, yeah, they are worth all the celebrations for. Thank you. Okay, so just so you know, according to a research I happened to come across by the Population Reference Bureau, it says that a number of countries, and they highlighted a few countries, Nigeria, Congo, Ethiopia, that the population is projected to be about 440 million for Ethiopia, 182 million for Nigeria, and 182 million for Nigeria, and 178 million for Congo thereabout. So, but it is actually saying that and all of these figures will be collectively increased by 2050. So this means that there is a huge opportunity that the consumer market in Africa will immerse great investment opportunities. So when we tell our stories, when we build our branded content, when we begin to spin the narrative in favor of the continent, we must remember that there is huge potential in the consumer market. And it's not just, as Lekon Lawal rightfully said, it's not just about building product. It's about putting the people before the product. Africa, we should have products. Africa as a product itself should be seen as for the people, by the people, to the people. So even as we attract investment opportunities, even as we begin to invite the rest of the world into Africa, we must remember it is the people first. It is Africa first. It is our truth first. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Africa, our great beloved continent. Just as we begin to wrap up officially the end of a successful GAFCON 2019, I would like to quickly remind us once again that at 7 p.m. you are cordially invited to join us to a beautiful evening reception graciously hosted by our friends at 1000 Hills Distilleries. Can we put our hands together for them? And 1000 Hills Distillery is located at KK30 Avenue. KK30 Avenue, and there is a landmark. We're going to put up the information on the screen, so you can take the details, and just so you want to call a taxi, you give them that information and you will find your way to 1000 Hills Distilleries. The cocktail reception starts at 7 p.m. tonight. Now, earlier, if you remember, I did make an announcement that the NEV Africa, organizers and conveners of this conference, have graciously also gotten a discounted city bus tour for all delegates who may be interested in experiencing Kigali beyond walking from the convention center or moving from the convention center to your hotel. For those who may be interested in engaging and experiencing more in and around the city of Kigali, there is a discounted bus tour which is for 2 hours. It starts at 5 p.m. We encourage you to please get back to the pickup point, which is here at the convention center at the latest 4:30, because the bus will leave at exactly 5 p.m. No African time, I'm afraid. The bus leaves at 5 p.m. exactly for 2 hours, and a pickup point is here at the convention center, and the final destination where it will drop everyone who goes on the bus tour will be at 1000 Hills Distillery. So you might want to seize the opportunity to go on a city tour and end up at the great, brilliant reception happening tonight. It's only for $20. Original price of the Kigali city tour is $40, but because we are delegates at the GAFCOM, it's been discounted to $20. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to say thank you to you all for being a part of the maiden edition of GAFCOM 2019. Please put your hands together for yourselves. A round of applause. And we are coasting to the end of hashtag Speak for Africa, hashtag GAFCOM 2019, when you do post and continue the conversation online, offline. I would like to end my own part of the work for 3 days, hosting you, introducing the amazing sessions we've had, and of course the speakers, and engaging with you one-on-one. It's been a pleasure being your anchor from the day one up until now. I would like to end with a famous quote by late President Nelson Mandela, which says, "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. But if you talk to a man in his language, that goes to his heart." As we continue to communicate and spin the narrative in the best interest of Africa, let us remember that truth should be at the heart of what we say. I would like to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please rise. Could you please rise? Find someone around you, and in your own language, not English, but in your own language, dialect, whatever it is, say to the person, "It's been a pleasure meeting you, and we will meet again." Obi m dị aṅụrị ịmata unu niile. Ama m na anyị ga-ahụ ọzọ. Absolutely. Great. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. And we would like to let you know, that we have lunch, light bites at the foyer. We would like you to engage a lot more, make contacts, and of course, exchange numbers. May I ask all delegates to please come on stage for a group photograph, and this shows that we are becoming one integrated continent. Can I ask all delegates on stage, please? May I request all delegates on stage for a group photograph? All delegates on stage, please. Please come. Yes, all delegates on stage. Don't worry, when you come up on stage, you can do that. Can I have everybody on stage, please? At least when you have everyone together, you all can just. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, please, can I have everyone on stage? May I request everyone on stage, please? Once I leave here, it's all your stage. May I request everyone, and we can make use of the stairs as well. May we request the taller gentleman to stand behind. We'll make use of the stairs. We'll make use of the stairs. Yeah. Yes. May I request that the taller gentleman in particular, may we have you behind? So we can make space and make room. We still got space up here. May we request the taller gentleman? Yeah. Oh. Can we have the lights? Can we have the lights? Can we have the lights, please? Perez, please follow Deji's attention. Follow Deji's instruction, please, Perez.
Never giving in, giving up's not an option, gotta get it in. Witness, I got the heart of 20 men. No fear, go to sleep in the lion's den. That glow, that spark, that crown. You're looking at the king of the jungle now. Stronger than ever, can't hold me down. 100 miles gunning from the pitcher's mound. Straight game face, it's game day. See me running through the crowd, feeling melee. No trick plays, I'm Bill Gates. Take a genius to understand me.
Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henry A.K. Chukwu, and it's been my pleasure being your host. Please join us for a quick bite at the foyer, and we look forward to seeing more interactions from you, with you, about Africa, the new Africa. Thank you, and have a very safe travel back to your respective destinations. God bless you. God bless Africa.
Gotta love the life that we live in.